Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto is born 6 years before his parents' death. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. A young boy panted, hearing screams of pain echo throughout the village as the ground rocked and vibrated for miles around him. His cerulean blue eyes looked in fear to the large creature assaulting his home, everything he'd known for the past 5 years of his life. Those blue eyes widened however when his spiky blonde hair was pushed back by a clearly man-made wind. The sight of a massive orange toad landing directly on top of the orange fox, who had destroyed his home in moments. "Du-chan," he whispered, knowing that only two men could call on such a toad, and one was far from home at the time. The 6-year-old's eyes hardened, the once dominating fear seemingly leaving him as his little legs carried him off, his senses picking up the mixed chakra of his father, his mother, that large fox and a small, new chakra. The boy knew what he was doing endangered him, knew he wouldn't be able to help, but he had to, something was dragging him there. The silver-haired masked teen looked in fear as he caught a glimpse of golden hair running through the streets ahead of him, his eyes widening in horror when he saw the boy seemingly running towards where the demon fox had just reappeared and the giant toad was forced to disappear. "Naruto," the boy called, falling on deaf ears before he growled and gave chase. Behind the silver-haired teen's mask, a strange red eye spun, allowing him to see an unusual amount of chakra running from the blonde boy's legs, increasing his speed to keep them apart. "I have to catch up before he reaches the Kyuubi and sensei, he'll only be in danger," he thought aloud, pulsing chakra to his own leg muscles. He wouldn't catch the blonde in time, not before they both came into a clearing as a massive claw embedded itself straight through an older blonde-haired man. The man looked to them, both now seeing his eyes not those similar cerulean the seemingly carbon copy Naruto had. They were golden and toad-like, red markings around his eyelids. "Then Naruto, Kakashi, I'm sorry," he whispered, his changed eyes going to a woman with long red hair, golden chains sprouting from her back. "Kushina," he breathed, the woman looking at him weakly with emotional and physical pain written all over her face. The blonde-haired man made a final hand seal, and with a shout of fury, the beast that had destroyed their home vanished, sucked into an altar holding a newborn baby boy. "Du-chan." Naruto screamed, tears long since running down his face as he ran to catch his much larger and heavier father. Kakashi saw Kushina begin to teeter forward and vanished and reappeared in front of her, catching her gently. He then looked up to see the young blonde cradling his father, Namikaze Minato the Yondaime Hokage, his small frame shaking in anguish. The silver-haired teen removed a wide Anbu mask from his face, revealing pain-stricken mix-matched eyes and tears of his own. "D2-chan, say something," the boy begged, gritting his teeth as he used all of his strength to shake the limp body of his father. When the boy got no response, not even an inkling of motion from his father, a cry erupted from his throat aimed straight to the heavens. As Kakashi stood, gently laying the still-breathing Kushina on the ground, he felt a firm grip on his shoulder. Looking back, the young teen was beyond shocked to see a blonde-haired woman, a purple jewel mark in the center of her forehead. The woman with a face of pure remorse easily pushed the teen back down to sit with Kushina and walked past him towards Naruto. "Minato, I should have been the one to use such a technique," he heard an aged voice lament, turning back to see a much older man encased in black shinobi garb. Looking back, they both watched as the blonde-haired woman pulled the child into a hug, gently setting the motionless body of his father on the ground. The young blonde could only cry into the woman's chest, having no strength to fight back her comforting attempts. "The entire Uzumaki Namikaze family made a great sacrifice tonight," the old voice once again brought Kakashi's attention. The teen watched as Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Sandaime Hokage, walked to the altar and gently picked up the form of a crying crimson-haired child. "Forced to be such a hero on the day of your birth and to witness the death of your father at such a tender young age, this world truly is unforgiving," the man whispered in his own anguish. He too had lost family tonight, his wife. "Kakashi," the boy's attention was pulled by the blonde woman's voice. "Take Naruto and carry him back to the village, I will take Kushina myself," she requested, walking forward with the boy passed out in her arms. "What about Minato-sensei, Tsunade-sama?" he asked, looking back to the motionless body of the closest thing he had to a father since his own died. "I've got him," Hiruzen said, as a copy of himself went and picked his successor up gently. With that, they left the clearing where a family had lost their father and the village had lost their leader. A few days later found Naruto sitting bedside of his hospitalized mother, a cold emotionless look on his once boisterous young face. His head shot up as he felt her limp hand grip his own, but was saddened to still see her completely unconscious. His godmother, Tsunade, had told him that it would be some time before his mother awoke, if she even did come out of this coma-like state. The young boy never imagined going through this, his father dying to seal a Bijuu within his newborn brother and his mother's life still in jeopardy. "Naruto-kun, I see you haven't gone home to rest like I asked," Tsunade sighed, walking in and placing a comforting hand on the boy's shoulder. I'm not ready for this, Ba-chan, why did it have to be them? He begged, and it was all Tsunade could do to fight back her own scars of loss. Naruto, she whispered, kneeling down beside his chair. I've lost a lot of people, it's never fair or easy and it won't be. But, someone once told me that someone gives their lives for others so that their precious people can keep on living. Even if their sacrifice means they won't be able to see them grow or tell them every day how much they love them. I want to make Tu-chan proud, and Ka-chan, I don't want to lose her, but I know she doesn't have long Ba-chan, he whispered, his long spiky hair hiding his eyes. Why do you say that Naruto-kun? Tsunade asked, hoping that the child would hold on to hope that his mother would live. I just know, he said sadly, looking at the dirt floor of this secret facility they had brought his mother to. However, his head shot up when his mother's grip tightened on his small hand, finding her conscious and in pain, judging by the look she gave him. Nari-chan, she whispered, her violet eyes looking into his blue eyes with nothing but love. I'm so sorry for all your father and I have put you through the past couple days. He could see the regret forming in her eyes as she struggled to find the breath to speak. I want you to be the best big brother you can and look after Menma for me. I know you'll do so great and I wish I could stay with you both. He could see the pride in her eyes as a lone tear ran down her cheek, a river flooding down his own. Remember everything your father and I taught you and pass it on to Menma, he's always going to need you. The tears seemed to hasten as he felt her grip loosen and the solitary drone of the monitor filled his ears. Ka-chan, he whispered, lowering his head so that his spiky long blonde hair hid his eyes. His free hand gripped her limp hand tightly as he felt something strong rise from within him. He felt overwhelmed with power and before he knew it a scream escaped his lips and roots burst from the soil. The cave soon filled by trees, all surrounding the hospital bed his mother laid in, cherry blossoms blooming from the branches. Naruto looked around at what he'd just created, shock evident on his face, Tsunade mirroring his look from where she had been unintentionally thrown to. But, when he turned to where his mother was, he saw the smile etched onto her lips. I'll never let you down, Ka-chan, Tu-chan, he choked, soaking in the serene look she wore. Mokuten, Tsunade gaped, unable to fathom what had just smacked her into a wall. It was roughly 2 weeks later and it found Tsunade sitting in her private study of the Senju clan compound. She sat relaxed with a saucer of sake in her hand and a sleeping Naruto's head on her lap, in her other hand was a file. One specifically that brought tears to her eyes, bringing up memories she had long since buried and tried her best to forget about. I guess, it all makes sense now, Naruto-kun, she whispered, gently running her hand through his hair. What you awakened, your father's ability. So, a deep voice stopped her train of thought, sounding mirthful yet sorrowful. It seems you've found that old file and connected dots long forgotten, Tsuhaime, her eyes widened as she looked up, seeing a giant of a man with long spiky white hair. Jiraiya, she mumbled, before setting down her sake and the file, gently moving Naruto's head from her lap. When did you get back, she asked, hesitantly walking towards the man. Not long ago, seeing you has always been my first stop when you were home, he smiled, though it seemed a bit forced. I guess it was only a matter of time before you found out who he really was, he sighed, closing the gap between them and pulling her against him in an embrace. He felt her shake as sobs immediately began to rack her form and she wrapped her arms around his waist, pulling him as tightly to her as she could manage. He hushed her and she realized that he too was crying, mourning his lose as well. I know, I wish it was me instead of him who invoked the seal, it should have been me, he whispered, showing her a weakness she hadn't seen in years. If I wasn't out of the village, I could have stopped him, and his self-blaming path halted when she pulled just far enough away to pin him with a weak glare. You wouldn't have stopped him, he wouldn't have let you, and you know it, Baka, she choked, and his head fell to rest on her shoulder, finally letting the dam completely break. His large arms wrapping around her as he sobbed like a child, and rightfully so. San and no Jiraiya had lost more than a student and apprentice because of the attack, as had Tsunade. The sound of flesh hitting wood resounded throughout the clearing, a young Naruto beating his fists into the worn trunk of a tree. The young boy was going about his recently started routine, throwing the odd kick in, uncaring of the presence he sensed observing him. So, this is why Tsunade has to clean you up every evening, Gaki, the voice of Jiraiya asked, making the boy pause for only a moment before he continued on. The white-haired Sanin sighed, resigning himself to watching, figuring he might as well pick out the boy's faults and help him correct them. Tighten your stance a bit, you're making yourself open. Once again Naruto paused, however this time his stance became just over shoulder length apart. Jiraiya smiled at that, he understood why Naruto was acting this way. He himself had been very similar when things affected him in the past, quiet and focused, needing some way to physically vent his emotions. You know, the academy will be starting soon, but if you'd like I can teach you as much as you want. All I want, the blonde paused, standing normally, is to protect Menma, just like I promised. He turned, showing his blue eyes in a hardened state, not usually seen in a 6-year-old as tears fell from them. Jiraiya stood from his sitting position, walking over to his godson and placed a comforting hand atop his head. "Naruto, I'll teach you everything I know, and then some, I promise," he smiled at the boy, earning a sad smile from the boy. "But, we need to talk about what you did the other day, and what it means." "You mean the Mokuton, Jiraiya-ji?" Naruto asked, earning a smile from Jiraiya at how quickly he connected the dots, just as intellectually sharp as his father before him. "That's right, it's an extremely rare technique, so rare that the only documented user was the Shaddai, no one before or after him ever having it, until you," the Sannin answered, now sitting down in front of the boy bringing them to the same height. "Until you master it, I want you to keep it hidden because it could put you in a lot of danger." Naruto was surprised at how serious Jiraiya was being, it wasn't something he often saw, but it earned the man a nod of understanding. "But, how will I master it if no one knows how to use it?" he questioned, concerned that he may always have something to hide. "Your Bach-an is the granddaughter of the Shaddai, as such he left scrolls for the family in case anyone awakened it. I've already begun reading those scrolls to help you learn, and when you're older, she and I will give them to you to study," the Sannin explained, Naruto accepting his explanation easily. "Can we start training now?" the blonde asked, earning a small chuckle from the man. "Yes, we can, Naruto, but let's give it a bit more time before we start with your Mokuton," he smiled, earning a determined nod from the boy. "For now, we'll start with chakra control and refine your taijutsu. Have you ever heard of the style your father used?" The blonde boy shook his head in the negative, earning a small nod from the man. "I think he would have wanted to see you use it, so it's where we'll begin." The blonde gave him a nod, and the godson and godfather set off on their training. Both determined to push Naruto's limit and see the boy make his wish come true. "I won't let anyone I care about ever be hurt again," he swore to himself, listening intently to what Jiraiya was explaining about his father's style. 7 years later, Naruto found himself thinking of that promise he made himself as he looked at the reflective metal of his headband. He moved his finger to trace the engraved leaf before he wrapped the black cloth around his head, his spiky blonde hair now slightly slicked back. He looked out over the horizon from atop the Hokage monument, his father's stone-carved head to be specific. On either side of him stood two of his former classmates, now teammates and friends. The first was a girl with brown hair allowed to flow freely down her back. Her eyes were black and her skin pale, showing a bit of a contrast with the violet high-collared sleeveless shirt, grey pants tucked into brown shinobi sandals, and red forearm covers she wore. On the back of her shirt, the Uchiha clan fan symbol was emblazoned proudly. This was Uchiha Izumi, clanswoman to two of his best friends and top female student of the academy. The other was Hana, the heiress of the Inyazuka clan and one of Naruto's oldest friends. The girl also had long tamed brown hair kept in a ponytail, tattoos on her cheeks that were customary for any Inyazuka who had been given their Ninken companion. She wore a black tank top that was slightly covered by a tan vest, black skin-tight shorts, and a matching pair of black shinobi sandals. Hana was very skilled in her clan's secret jutsu, a key point being the fact that she was given 3 companions instead of just 1. She was also studying the arts of a medical specialist. "I wonder if Shisui Nai and Itachi-kun have heard we graduated yet," Izumi wondered aloud, smiling as she enjoyed the setting sun. "They haven't, but I'll be sure to tell my son that you passed, Izumi-chan." A teasing voice made the girl jump and spin around with a crimson blush. "I'm sure you let your big brother know," a woman with black hair teased, her matching black eyes seeming mirthful. "Makoto-sama, what are you doing here?" Izumi asked, as Naruto stared at his mother's best friend in confusion. "Makoto-ka-chan, you're our Jounin-sensei, aren't you?" The woman smiled warmly and nodded at the blonde, enjoying the title she had earned from him. "That is right, Naruto-kun, I, Uchiha Makoto, will be in charge of Team 7, a wide smile came to her face as she gave them a wink and thumbs up. "I can't wait to see what my cute little genin are made of," she giggled, earning a determined look from Naruto as the two girls' sweat dropped. "But, why were you chosen for us? Don't you have things to do with the clan?" Izumi asked, earning a small smile from her clan's matriarch. "My husband is the clan head, as appointed by my father," she reminded the young Uchiha. "Besides, who better to train you with that Sharingan of yours while Shisui-kun is busy, and I did promise to look after Naruto-kun, and we can't forget my little protege Hana, I'm the best suited to train her with medical ninjutsu." All 3 genin smiled at the recognition Makoto gave them, looking forward to working under the woman. "Now then, you 3 should go and rest for the night, tomorrow I'll be putting you through your first test as a team." All 3 saluted energetically, making the Uchiha matriarch giggle and then smile as she watched them leave in their own ways. Hana leaving by simply strolling off, her 3 Ninken in tow, most likely taking it easy because of the test in the morning. Izumi used a shunshin, slightly surprising Makoto that she had already learned it, most likely from her brother older than her by 2 years. Lastly, Naruto just simply sat down face towards the slowly setting sun, not actually leaving and confusing her to a degree. "Is everything okay, Naruto-kun?" she asked, the blonde-haired boy she thought of as another son. I just wanted to sit here and watch the sunset, Mikoto-sensei. He earned himself a frown from the black-haired woman, having grown rather accustomed to the honorary Kachan suffix he had been adding to her name. But, she also knew he still thought of her in such a way, and the bond of a student and sensei was very important. Do you think they'd be proud of me, sensei? He nearly whispered, the Uchiha's frown deepening knowing who he meant. She didn't hesitate for a moment to sit down next to the boy and wrap her arms around him in a comforting embrace. Both of them would be unbelievably proud of the young man you have become, how diligently you work, the way you look after your Itaudo, and becoming the rookie of the year thanks to your studies. There's no doubt in my mind, Naruto-kun, she whispered in a soft, gentle tone. Makoto pulled away slightly and wiped the tear from his cheek, smiling when he smiled at the gesture, even if there was sadness still present. I'm going to head home, but promise me no more questions like that. You know they loved you, and even in death their love can reach you and guide you, she said standing, before leaning back down to kiss his forehead as she often did. Don't be up here too long, I wasn't kidding that I'm going to test you 3 tomorrow, and I promise I won't go easy. The blonde blushed slightly at the gesture of affection, but agreed to her instruction nonetheless and watched as she disappeared in a shunshin as Izumi had. Naruto turned his blue eyes to the setting sun once more. I promise, Kachan, Tu-chan, I'll make my dream come true. I'll find peace for the shinobi world. His eyes hardened slightly as he spoke to himself. Again, the blonde called sitting in the lotus position shirtless with his eyes closed. Across from a seemingly mini version of the blonde but with crimson red hair, who glared at him with violet orbs. The smaller version was upside down on his back, his butt against the wall as if he'd just rolled down it. Don't give me that look, Itaudo, you're the one who demanded I train you. The crimson-haired boy spun himself around, coming to his feet with a pout on his face. But, all you've had me doing is walking up this stupid wall with chakra, and I can't even do that, the boy pouted, earning a smirk from the elder brother. Your chakra wells are half the size of my own, and you're 6 years younger than me. You need this more than anything else, Menma-chan. The slightly older Naruto opened his eyes, revealing the piercing blue eyes he was becoming famed for. You master this and the next step, and I promise to teach you the Hachidori-ken, his eyes shutting once more after seeing his brother seemingly satisfied with the compensation offered and running off to his task, right up the wall. For him to only, moments later, roll right back down the wall much to his own ire. Nonetheless, the boy shot back up to do the same thing several more times, getting slightly higher with each try. The door to the training facility opened, bringing both Uzumaki's attention, though you wouldn't be able to tell from Naruto not moving or opening his eyes. Naruto-kun, Uchiha Izumi-chan is here looking for you, a woman with short brown hair and a gray kimono said, smiling at the unmoving blonde. Send her and Shizune-chan, thank you, he responded, before standing up and looking towards Menma, who seemed to be getting higher and higher every try. The blonde smiled at that before turning his head as the brunette Uchiha walked into the room, his smile growing in size. Izumi walked in, not much having changed with her appearance-wise, aside from a red and white string hanging tied from the kunai in her thigh holster. The girl blushed slightly at seeing the shirtless form of the blonde, doing her best not to look at his defined abs as she greeted him. Good morning, Naruto-kun, I see Menma-chan has pressured you into training him today, she said with a small giggle, earning a bashful look from the blonde as he rubbed the back of his head. Yeah, I figured it would be a good time for me to train on what the Akami tribe left me with, but he's not been much help to my concentration, he chuckled, watching as this time the boy did an elaborate flip from the wall before charging it again. You mean your new summons, didn't you just get the contract a couple missions back? Her head titled to the side slightly making Naruto smile at her action. He nodded, I did but, since I was already a Toad summoner and unconsciously broke my deal with Gamabunta-sama, Shiro-sama has promised to teach me some of the stronger techniques to make up for me having to deal with Iro-senin. He chuckled slightly, remembering how furious his godfather had been. Anyway, was there something you needed, Izumi-chan? The girl, Naruto unaware of the fact, blushed at the suffix he used and smiled. Mikoto-sensei asked me to come get you, she wants us to meet at the training grounds for something very important. Naruto easily nodded, grabbing his long-sleeved black shirt and pulling it over his head, proudly displaying the symbol of the Uzumaki clan on his back. Itaudo, keep it up, I have to go meet my team, the blonde called, throwing a kunai just above where the boy flipped from on the wall. Get back up there and use that to mark your progress. Menma smirked seeing how high the kunai was, almost near the ceiling, before smiling foxily at his brother. Sure thing, be safe on E-chan. That earned him a thumbs up from the exiting blonde, making him smile a bit more before he returned to his task. Naruto stopped just outside the door, in front of his weapon rack, and grabbed the katana hanging there. He smiled as he unsheathed it slightly, just checking the blade, before slinging it over his shoulder by the red and white string that held it there firmly. Ready when you are, Izumi-chan, he smiled and began leading the way through the Senju compound that Tsunade had raised them at. Any idea what sensei wants us for on our day off? Izumi shrugged at the question, having wondered the same, but was waved off when she asked the woman herself. Not sure, but I guess you already figured it's important if she's calling us on our day off, as they exited the Shinto-styled pagoda manor, immediately taking to the trees. The compound of the Senju was not only surrounded but also slightly hidden in the forest that encompassed the ground. It was also beneficial that it was on the other side of the training grounds, making it a rather short commute for the pair. When the two came into the training grounds, they were met with the sight of their sensei in her normal Anbu-styled attire and their third teammate, surrounded by her 3 pups. Both women smiled at their arrival, before the pups made a beeline towards the blonde, tackling him to the ground, yipping happily as he laughed. "Hey guys, I know it's been a whole day since you saw me," he chuckled, moving his hands over their fur. "I swear, they're more excited to see you than me some days," Hana giggled, making the 13-year-old blonde chuckle more before she called them off. "Hello Naruto-kun, Izumi-chan, I'm sorry for calling you 3 here today, but I wanted to give you these," she said with a smile, handing each child a slip of white paper with writing all over it. "These are your passes into the Chunin exams." "See Chunin exams?" Izumi questioned, her eyes widening as she read the location of the exams. "But, sensei, it says here they're taking place in Iwagakure," the brunette Uchiha yelped in surprise, earning a slightly tense nod from the matriarch. "That's correct, some of you may have heard that Sandaime Sama has been in talks recently with Tsuchikage Dono for an official truce. Part of that will be a Chunin exam within both our lands, this year's being in Iowa, which I took the liberty of nominating my cute little Jenin for at the Jounin Council meeting," she smiled proudly at the stunned trio. "Makoto-sensei, don't you think me going to Iowa will be a bit terse, given how much they hate 2chan?" the blonde asked, showing a rare bit of worry to his teacher. Makoto shook her head in the negative. "Well, there are some that may hate your father for his actions against Iwagakure during the last war. The fence-sitter has sworn that you'll be safe as long as you remain in their village, so long as it's during the exams." She noticed Naruto sigh, but he immediately gave her one of his most confident looks. "Then, I guess I better show them what Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto is capable of." Makoto smiled at his claim, knowing full well the boy was far more powerful than his years would make you believe. Not only had she been training him, but Sharingan no Kakashi and 2 of the Sannin had been training him as well. "Shishui Nai-chan and Itachi-kun will be so surprised," Izumi remarked happily, mentioning 2 of the blonde's best friends and sparring partners. "Actually, your brother and Itachi-kun will be a part of our guard detail." Hokage-sama added 2 guards to our requirements of participating. Makoto smiled at the giddy girl, most likely due to the fact she'd be able to travel with her crush, which just so happened to be the matriarch's own son. "When do we leave, sensei?" Hana asked, looking up expectantly at the woman. "Within the next 3 days, so that we may arrive before the beginning of the exams next week," she smiled, before pointing at the papers she had handed out. "Keep those on you and sign them, we'll need them to enter Iwagakure, and this is official business with another nation, so I expect all 3 of you to remain on your best behavior." The 3 immediately saluted, earning a giggle from their leader, dismissed. Following the order, the 3 nearly jumped when she vanished in a puff of smoke. "Ajubunshin?" Hana asked, earning shrug from the blonde. "She must still be meeting with the Hokage and sent a clone to tell us," Naruto guessed, a yawn escaping him. "Well, I've got to get back to Menma, he's probably making it to the ceiling by now," he smiled with a wave before disappearing in a swirl of leaves. Several miles away, an aged man in white robes with red accents smiled, a pipe in the corner of his mouth. "He is quite the sharp shinobi, much like his father was," the man said, looking up to Makoto, her black eyes fondly looking on as her team went on their way. "He is much like his father, but anger him, and his temper is as explosive as Kushina-chan's, and just as leveled as Minato-sama's," she admitted, stepping back to the front of the desk. "I must admit, I was a little hesitant about letting you step away from the Anbu to take them under your tutelage, but all 3 have become strong in just a short time of 6 months," the man praised, blowing a cloud of smoke from his mouth. "I have no doubt they'll do well in these exams and go on to be splendid shinobi," he smiled, the mystic ball phasing to a new image of the blonde now training with his crimson-haired brother. "Thank you, Hokage-sama," Makoto bowed, making the Sandaime Sarutobi Hiruzen chuckle. "No need for that, I've taken it upon myself to keep a close surveillance on our young Uzumaki brothers, and I appreciate you not mentioning that a full Anbu squad will be following them alongside your clansmen," she nodded in understanding. "I'm not quite sure why Inoki Dono has extended his hand out in this manner, but I suppose maybe the old midget has grown tired of the wars as I have. Does his decision reflect throughout his forces is the question, however," Makoto questioned, her Sharingan flaring to life at the thought of a betrayal. "Exactly my thoughts, which is why I'm giving you explicit authority to kill any who try to harm your young ones, excluding their exam opponents," she nodded. While she hated killing, she had no qualms doing so for her loved ones. A month and 5 days later, found Uzumaki Naruto standing with his katana drawn across from the granddaughter of the Sandaime Tsuchikage, Kuretsuchi. The fighting had yet to begin, but the blonde and the black-haired girl had quite a bit of a grudge between them since the beginning of the tests, hence why he was already in his strange kinjutsu stance. He really is the son of the Yondaime, and that Uzumaki girl, just seeing that stance, brings back memories of the Second and Third Shinobi World War. A short old man, Anoki the Sandaime Tsuchikage, said, his face tense. My granddaughter is no slouch, but he certainly has held back his true abilities until now, he commented, earning a sagely nod from the Hokage next to him. Naruto-kun is at the top of his generation in all but Jinjutsu. Those Uzumaki reserves hinder his ability to use them, but make him quite able to break them. Hiruzen smiled proudly, looking fondly to the serious blonde. Well, I suppose I should get my speech over with before they begin their battle prematurely, the old man chuckled, before surprisingly floating from his chair and standing on the banister of the balcony that was the cage viewing box. The Wagakure, I would like to take this moment to thank our potential allies and guests of Konohagakure for appearing here today and testing the genin of our village in these exams. He paused, noting that all eyes aside, those in the Colosseum proper were on him. Regardless of the outcome of this final match, we will be entering into a time of peace with Konoha. One that Hokage Dono and I believe will be prosperous for both villages in the many years to come. He was nearly surprised by the resounding cheers amongst his people and Hiruzen's. Now then, for the main event, Genin of Iwagakure Kuretsuchi and Genin of Konohagakure Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto, you may begin. The moment the words left his mouth, both Genin charged forward, colliding in the center, Naruto pushing the girl back with his katana against her kunai. Both gritted their teeth, Naruto clearly winning with pure strength, but surprising her when a wolfish grin came to his face as sporadic bolts of lightning emanated from his blade. The result shocked her when the amplified sharpness of the blade began slicing into her kunai, forcing her to jump back and create some distance between them. She flipped one more time, making several hand seals as she did, landing in a crouch only to slam her hands to the ground. Doten. Doryuso. She called, spikes of earth racing towards the blonde. Naruto made the ram seal with one hand, holding his katana in a reverse grip with the other. Uzumaki Kinjutsu. Ukami no Rakurai, Uzumaki sword style. Lightning strike of the wolf, he growled, before making a large sweep with his blade that unleashed a lightning bolt with the head of a wolf. The bolt easily decimated her attack. However, when the girl got a clear view, she was shocked to see the boy gone. Before he suddenly reappeared, sliding in below her, landing the strongest kick she had ever felt against her jaw. She heard him call before another blonde appeared from a puff of smoke. Shooting up to her with a flying knee right into her gut, it called before two more clones appeared from it, using the original clone as a springboard. The quickly landed twin elbow strike sent her soaring higher than the open roof of the stadium, mock high, she could still hear them yell. Brendan, the shout from behind her sent a chill down her spine, before what she guessed was the original blonde slammed a chakra-enhanced kick in the center of her spine. The result was the girl making her own personal crater, able to feel several of her bones either shift or break. Unfortunately, looking up she realized there was no time to worry about that, the sight of an infamous ball of blue chakra in the boy's hand as he dive-bombed her prone figure. She closed her eyes, fully expecting the worst to become of her. However, as more than ample time for the jutsu to hit her passed, she opened her eyes. I'll only ask you once to forfeit, I'm sorry but you won't be a match for me, the blonde proclaimed, the coldness in his deep azure orbs frightening her. It was like she was staring into the eyes of a predator, one that knew the battle was his. Proctor-san, I forfeit the match, Kuretsuchi whispered. The winner of the Chunin exams is Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto of Konohagakure no Sado. The announcement was met with a stunned silence, aside from a handful of Konoha shinobi cheering quite loudly. But, as the infamous jutsu disappeared and the blonde offered a hand up for the girl, the crowd reacted with a slow-building roaring applause. Kuretsuchi, for her part, felt her cheeks heat as she witnessed the kind smile that came to the boy's face, his entrancing orbs now showing a surreal warmth instead of the glacial chill from a moment ago. Thank you for the match, Kuretsuchi-chan, I look forward to a spar in the future with you, he said, before vanishing in a body flicker. The girl watched the place he had been, not knowing quite exactly how to feel. Especially not after he had been so kind to her at the end, when she had been so awful to him during the exams prior. Don't try to understand it, try as you may and Uzumaki will always surprise you, the proctor said from behind her, a smile on his face. I told you before the announcement even came, Kuro-chan, your hate not only blinded you, but made you underestimate him. The black-haired girl looked down sadly, I know, too-chan, I guess Jai-chan will be happy that I stopped trying to argue with him about it. She sighed, a small sad smile coming to her face as she found the blonde in the stands now, crowded by his loved ones. I look forward to the next spar, Naruto-kun, I won't lose again. Naruto appeared in the Konohagakure section of the viewing area, immediately swamped by all that had come to watch him fight. The fastest and first to reach him was his sensei, the black-haired woman, nearly knocking him down with a mighty hug. Naruto-kun, that was amazing, I'm so proud of you. The blonde chuckled, "Thank you Makoto-ka-chan, I wouldn't be here without you," he said, hugging the woman back. "That was a really nice combo Atauto, you did well," a silver-haired young man, wearing the Konoha Jounin vest said, his tone rather lazy. But, he knew exactly which style the blonde had derived that taijutsu technique from. Naruto smiled as he was released from the hug. "Thanks Kakashi Nai," he smiled wolfishly at the lazy Jounin. Before he knew it, his teammates, Tsunade, Jiraiya and Menma as well as the Sandaime all surrounded him. "That was a wonderful display Naruto-kun, throughout the entire finals, I'm proud to welcome you to the rank of Chunin," the elderly Hokage smiled, holding his pipe at the corner of his mouth. Naruto smiled wide, bowing his head slightly, "Thank you, Sandaime-sama," earning a small chuckle from the Hokage. Momochi's Zabuza wasn't one to shy away from any fight, he lived by the sword and would rather accept death's cold embrace than run from anyone or thing. It's that same philosophy that earned him the status of demon after prevailing in situations others would have met death in. But, for the life of the famed swordsman, things seemed highly stacked against him with not an inkling of hope to his favor. Let it be said though, while the thought of running crossed his mind, the proud man steeled himself as he glared into the demonic whites of a partially transformed Jinchuriki, whom he'd just failed in assassinating. The wielder of the Kubikira Hacho, despite his hardened eyes, let a somber chuckle escape his bandaged mouth. "I suppose Mei-sama was right," he grunted, sinking low into his stance, hauling his massive blade over his shoulder with practiced ease. "I'll wipe your existence from this world, Momochi," the transformed Yondaime growled, three tails flailing madly behind his crimson visage. "Your defection I allowed to slide, but this attempt and working for that harlot, they've damned your soul," he ground out with a stomp, cracking the ground beneath his foot. "I don't regret a damn thing you miserable midget," Zabuza snarled, his latest insult being the final straw. He released a slow breath as he watched a true demon disappear in an ungodly burst of speed. He could read Yagura's movements, he could even counter them, but he knew once that fist hit, his fate was sealed. Regardless, the master swordsman quickly threw his trusted blade to block the incoming attack. But his eyes widened, seeing the beast of a cage actually halted and unable to move. "Mokuten. Ikwaku nona, ensnaring roots," a voice unfamiliar to both men whispered, their trained ears able to pick up on it. "Zabuza-san, I've been sent to aid your survival and escape." The black-haired Kirinin looked over his shoulder, met by a man only inches shorter than him, all identifying features hidden by a black hooded cloak. All either Kirinin could make out was the bottom of a white mask, seemingly in the visage of a wolf. "Konoha Anbu," the deep angered voice of the Mizukage ground out, growling as he felt his chakra being negated by these strange roots. "Mizukage Dono, I'd like to say it's an honor to meet you, but your reputation precedes you even in my village," the masked nin greeted, his voice devoid of any and all emotion or tone. "You'll just be another body dead at my feet," the Mizukage growled, surprising the Anbu as he actually managed to break through his jutsu, even with his chakra being drained. "Sorry, Mizukage Dono, I have no plans of dying for a very long time," he smirked behind his mask, reaching for Zabuza's shoulder before both seemingly vanished into thin air. The Mizukage roared into the heavens, smashing his fists into the ground, anything but pleased with losing the two men. "What the fuck?" Zabuza looked around, finding himself still in the forest, but no longer able to sense the oppressive chakra of his former leader. "How did we?" His confusion was clear as day as he was unable to complete his sentence. "It's a jutsu of mine," the Konoha Anbu panted, Zabuza quickly deducing that it was a one-time use type deal from how haggard the boy seemed. "Inu Taicho, Ushi-senpai, mission accomplished," he grunted, still trying to catch his breath. It was at the moment the swordsman noticed the presence of two more Anbu, one with a dog mask and silver logic-defying hair and the other wearing an ox mask with unruly curly black hair. Zabuza nearly stuttered at the three crimson orbs gleaming through the masks at him. It was thanks to that odd number and their defining features that he quickly deduced who had come from Konoha to help them. "Mei-sama wasn't joking when she said Konohagakure was actually sending us some real help," he said in an impressed tone, easily hefting his massive blade over his head and into its holster. "Considering this kid used a famed jutsu of the Yondaime Hokage, and I'm staring down Sharingan no Kakashi and Shunshin no Shisui." The revealed Kakashi sighed, lazily reaching up to remove his mask, revealing most of his features. "I suppose there's no point in the masks for now, you two are free to remove them. I'm sure Izumi and Itachi have already done away with their own at the base." "You're quite sharp for a supposed demon," the lazy Anbu captain said with his infamous eye smile. Zabuza chuckled, "Not sharp enough to detect this one behind me back there, or run away from a losing fight," he berated himself, Mei surely would kill him when she found out. "Oh, don't be too surprised, Naruto-kun has a technique that makes him undetectable even to the greatest of sensory ninja," Kakashi continued on with his eye smile. "Akan-ai, could you not talk about my abilities in hostile territory?" The revealed blonde glared, Zabuza slightly surprised by the piercing blue eyes of his. Well, I'll be damned, the son of the Yondaime Hokage, Wakayakami, young wolf, Zabuza whistled, flabbergasted that Konoha had sent this much muscle. Forgive me, Naruto-kun, Kakashi chuckled sheepishly. The older shinobi silently berated himself, slightly cursing his laid-back attitude when they were still quite literally in the danger zone. Naruto, choosing to ignore his adoptive brother, inclined his head towards Zabuza. After all, he knew this man's reputation, and despite not liking some of his early work, he respected the man heavily. He was a true swordsman and shinobi. Zabuza-san, if you'd be so kind as to lead the way back, I believe it's time we take our leave. The four quickly did just that, Shisui smirking as he nudged the blonde slightly. So, you stuck in that head of yours trying to figure out how to beat him, the Uchiha asked, earning a small smirk from the blonde. I'm looking forward to taking down someone as strong as him. Naruto landed in the center of a derelict small town, Kakashi, Shisui and Zabuza landing shortly after him. Kakashi had ordered him to take lead as their censor, and one of 3 members under him up for the title of Anbu captain. The silver-haired shinobi found it surprising that 3 so young could be considered for the position, but having been younger when he too was given the promotion dashed most of that contradictory feeling. The experienced shinobi chalked it up to his protective nature when it came to his sensei's sons, and did as ordered, bequeathing his lead to the boys as he deemed fit. This the place, Zabuza-san? The implanted Sharingan wielder asked, just to confirm. Yeah, there's a high-level genjutsu in use to hide any chakra signatures from most sensors, but we've never had a Senin-level gaki to test them on, the bandaged man chuckled, nudging the young blonde with a jibe. I haven't mastered the technique yet, Zabuza-san, hence why I chose to flee instead of fight your Yondaime, Naruto corrected, gaining a bit of a pondering look. Last Ain-sama and I sparred, I believe my max time was 10 minutes and 30 seconds. Ain-sama? The swordsman asked, earning a nod from the blonde. The former senin of the Akami tribe who once was a shinobi years before the era of the warring period, thanks to his mastery of the technique, he's transcended any other summoner and actually become a member of the tribe, he admitted, giving the group some context. The guy's over 100 years old and apparently a summoning wolf now. The idea seemed beyond comprehension to the fabled swordsman. Naruto sighed and nodded, I don't know all the details, but it's what I've been told by the leader of the tribe. Ain is what's known as a lone wolf and transcends even the power of the boss summon I can call. If you want to teach me some of Kiri's techniques, I may be willing to tell you more in detail. Zabuza smirked at the blonde's bargain, having caught a glimpse of the katana the boy kept secured to his back. I may just take you up on that, he chuckled, looking towards the door of the main building when it suddenly opened, 4 people stepping out. The first were the 2 Konoha Anbu they had sent ahead of them, Uchiha Itachi and Izumi. Third came a man with spiky pale blue hair, wearing a black eye patch over one of his eyes, and a green battle guy. The last person to step out nearly made Naruto's jaw drop. She was a woman, maybe a few inches shorter than himself, with long auburn hair that spiked out and down as it went. Her wildly tamed hair went in front of her pale jade eyes, though the visible one peered at the blonde with poorly hidden mirth at seeing him evaluate her. Her hair finished by having 2 bangs come down that framed her face, while also crossing just above a healthy amount of cleavage. To say she was beautiful in her unique blue battle dress, with complements of armor and mesh, could be the understatement of the year in the blonde's eyes. Zabuza-chan, I'm glad our friends reached you in time, am I to assume your self-imposed mission didn't go as planned? The question was asked while she still looked over the blonde, diplomatically filing any points of teasing away for a later time. No, Zabuza shook his head before pulling out a scroll. However, before Yagura was able to stop me I killed Jinpachi and recovered his blade. You were right Mei-sama, I shouldn't have taken the risk. The Anbu at his sides were slightly surprised by his respectful and remorse tone, not having gotten the impression he was capable of either. It's okay, your risk paid off for us in the end, and I'm thankful to our new allies for bringing you back in one piece. Haku-kun will be very relieved, she smiled, and the swordsman's head sunk slightly at the mention of his very young apprentice. May I have your names? She asked, turning her gaze back to the blonde after regarding the other 2 Konohinin. Uchiha Shisui, the black-haired boy introduced himself, bowing his head slightly. Yo, Hada Kakashi, the lazy shinobi added, displaying his flippant attitude perfectly. Uzumaki Namik is Naruto, the blonde bowed slightly, his azure gaze never breaking from her jade green eyes. Mei nodded, walking towards the 3 with a bit of a sway to her hips. Alright, Naruto stuttered, missing the glare of his past genin teammate, directed at the buxom rebellion leader. Izumi had come to harbor feelings for the blonde over the tenure of working with him, but hadn't said anything due to her inner conflict of also caring deeply for the Uchiha standing next to her. The future Mizukage smiled again, if it's fine with all of you, I'd like to have a meeting to discuss how you all will play into our plans, specifically knowing your capabilities, she requested, earning nods of approval from each. Izumi-chan and Itachi-kun have already told me theirs, so you may show them to their quarters, she ordered, earning a nod from the stoic blue-haired man. A year, 365 days they had spent working with the rebellion, none came out of it unscarred. Even Naruto, with a healing prowess near that of their Shodai, had managed to sustain a literal scar. It went over his right eye and branched in several directions, showing that it was indeed a Raiden ability that had given it to him. Not only had it marred his once flawless sun-kissed skin, but the blue eye itself had fogged over as an effect of it, making him completely blind in the eye. But that hadn't hindered him as much as some would think, having learned he was left eye dominant, he had only had to adjust a slight amount to the odd new view. It did however leave him with a blind spot on his right peripheral, but some extra training with his sensory abilities over the span of a month, and he'd all but eliminated that hindrance. Many, even the Konoha Anbu, had been impressed with Naruto and his actions for the rebellion. Having twice gone into single combat with the Yondaime Mizukage, pushing the complete Jinchuriki to a stalemate each time. The first time having been when he had lost his eye due to the interference of Kurosaki Raiga, the wielder of the legendary Kiba blades, another member of the Broken Seven Swordsmen of the Mist. Only 3 of the original 7 before the war broke out still drew breath: Zabuza, Raiga and Hoshigaki Kisame, a Ronin who went missing a year prior to their arrival in Kiri. Naruto, having sparred with Zabuza many times and crossed blades with Raiga half as many times, was loath to face the third option. The man was apparently a chakra beast rivaling that of Ibijuu itself. The blonde was so lost in his thoughts, he nearly forgot his situation, but the cold steel cutting into his wrists was sure to remind him. He couldn't recall the number of days he'd spent in these shackles after his third battle against Yugura, but it had showed him something was going on. The underneath of the underneath was revealed to him, fully knowing that this war wasn't what it seemed. But he still didn't know exactly who was controlling things from the shadows. His imprisonment however hadn't been dull in the least. Yugura had taken every attempt to examine his bloodline, his abilities, and even had a bit of fun torturing him. Still, there was something about staring into those dead eyes of the Mizukage that told him he was being controlled, and the fact he could sense another presence within the shadows of his sessions. The heir to the Uzumaki chuckled, closing his eyes for a moment and allowing his teacher's lessons to flow through him. Upon opening his eyes, 2 blue lines raced from the corners of his hairline, running to and past his jaw. A sharp narrow triangle came down the center, stopping just as the tip came between his eyes, and finally, 3 bold whisker-like marks appeared on each cheek. This was the appearance of his Senenmoto, his already piercing blue eyes glowing in the dark cell. Seems I won't need to be playing to their hand any longer, backup is finally here, he growled, a wolfish grin marring his face as a look of near insanity settled over him. I'm going to kill that fucking midget today, the son of the Yondaime Hokage roared, shattering the chains that held him with but a flick of his arms. Outside of Kurigakure, the entire force of the rebellion was present, Mei and her commanders at the front accompanied by the Konoha Nin, sent to their aid. Supporting them was a fresh battalion of Konoha Anbu, sent the moment word had reached Sarutobi Hiruzen that Naruto was captured. Everyone, prepare for the battle of your life, today we take Kurigakure. Roared Mei, fire burning in her eyes. Just before she gave the order to charge, an explosion rocked the central tower of the Mizukage, in the heart of the dilapidated village. The amassed army watched as smoke billowed into the air as a body was thrown from the top, manic laughter soon following. Those with trained eyes could pick out the shirtless form of Uzumaki Namikaze, Naruto being the source. I'm gonna make you bleed, you damn midget. He roared, before launching after the thrown body. What are you people waiting for, move. Shisui ordered, knocking them out of the collective stupor of seeing the blonde on a rampage. The city was quickly thrown into utter chaos, at the very center of it being a full-out bout between Naruto and Yugura. If any got too close, the blonde was the first to kill them, be they enemies or dare them to interfere should they be allies. The blonde laughed, seeing blood running down the Mizukage's face from the onslaught he'd unleashed. Yugura glared at him through the crimson liquid, having never seen the Uzumaki this unstable or powerful, and the bastard hadn't even used a single jutsu yet. Go ahead, you damn midget, call the Bijuu's power, so when I kill your miserable ass I can rip it straight out of you. The blonde's words struck the Jinchuriki hard. Never had anyone willingly wanted to pull his Bijuu from him, but it would seem the cage had gone beyond too far in his torture. It was that moment alarms began to ring in his head, Mokuten Hijutsu. Jukai Koten. Naruto roared, clapping his hands together as the chakra surging became visible around him. The next moments took every soul by surprise, as the ground rumbled and a forest emerged within the city, completely changing the scape of the battle. Some buildings even having the misfortune to actually be completely ripped from their foundations. A certain auburn-haired Kunoichi looked around her in awe, and Naruto-kun, she whispered, having never fathomed something like this. It would seem he's breaking all his restraints. I honestly had no clue he could produce Mokuten of this scale myself, Kakashi mumbled. Shisui and Itachi left speechless. The sudden crackling of lightning broke them all from their reverie, a shocked gasp being the real reason it brought their attention. The small group of rebels turned to see Izumi, with the Kiba blade stabbed through her gut. The lightning crackling from them illuminating the sadistic sneer of Raiga. Izumi, Shisui and Itachi howled, neither able to accept the moments when she felt a ground limp. Raiga's manic laughter filled the now woodland streets. I told that dumbass we should have killed that blonde Gaki and given him a funeral long ago. I guess I'll have to clean up his mess and bury you all, he chuckled, licking her blood from the now lightning-free blade. Mei moved to blindly charge in and make short work of the Kurosaki, but Kakashi's hand on her shoulder stopped her. Don't, he just made this personal for two of the strongest Uchiha alive, they may kill you in their rage with no remorse. The leader of the rebellion was confused for only a moment before two blurs shot past them, reappearing before Raiga before one's kick went to the back of his kneecaps and the others went straight for his skull. Both landed with ease, resulting in the bewildered swordsman to be flipped sporadically. To finish off the tandem move, both enraged Uchiha slammed high axe kicks into the man's gut, completely knocking the air out of him before flipping away. Get up, Shisui growled, get up you bastard, I'm going to bring hell to life around you for hurting my dear Amato. The tears in his eyes did nothing to hide or hinder his unbridled rage, he was going to make this man suffer. Kakashi looked pensive, it would seem Raiga has allowed them both to unlock the next form of the Sharingan, the Mangekyo, he noted, before looking to Mei. We need to move out and let them handle this, Mei Dono, we'll only get in the way. Mei nodded numbly, hating that she couldn't do anything for the girl who she had thought of as a friend. I'll get to Ao and I'll order him here to see if he can do anything for Izumi, search and destroy any loyalists still fighting, she ordered, receiving a nod from the silver-haired Anbu before he went on his way. Not that there should be many left after Naruto-kun's jutsu, she thought before jumping off, she had felt the extinguish of hundreds of lives as the jutsu raged. All it did was increase her worry for the blonde she had grown the closest to. Said blonde was thrashing a second state Yagura, using a combination of Taijutsu, Kinjutsu and his Mokuton. Thanks to his enraged Senenmoto, he was granted far better control than usual over the technique, but he could gradually feel the effects even on his massive chakra wells. Stand still you bastard, Naruto growled, holding his hand out and clutching it as more branches sprouted from the ones near the cage. It was an attempt to anchor him down, but the beastly cage was proving to be able to smash through them with enough effort. Hein, you want to play that way, the blonde growled, landing on the ground before running through several hand seals, Kuchius no Jutsu. The plume of smoke that filled the area was encompassing, a massive pure white wolf with red tribal markings throughout his coat. So, it's the turtle again, Naruto Gaki, the wolf snarled, having had quite enough of this current foe. Hi, Ein-sama, forgive my summoning you without warning. The wolf looked up at his head to see the boy, we'll kill him today, and then reseal his Bijuu, it would seem you've already thrown quite a lot at him, why hasn't he fully transformed, the wolf growled, looking back at the Jinchuriki, before noticing his form starting to grow. Seems you spoke too soon, I'm going to need you to get me close enough to him and pin him down for me, Naruto growled, his Senenmoto wavering for a moment before being completely restored. His clone dispersing to immediately refresh the form. That's the last one, need to make it count Ein-sama, he said, spinning his blade expertly, his former seemingly insane rage gone. Then let's do it Gaki. The wolf roared, charging forward. Back with the two enraged Uchiha, they had quickly pushed Raiga onto the back foot, only holding back enough to prolong his suffering. After all, an Uchiha scorned was a demon incarnate, two of them was enough to extinguish any life given the chance. Ao had already arrived, having pulled the limp form of Izumi away from harm's way, Chijuro having been sent to watch his back as he attempted to heal her. Just as Raiga attempted to push himself back to his feet with the Kiba blades, Itachi and Shisui appeared on either side of him skewering him with their Tanto blades. To top it off, Itachi's eye began to bleed as black flames engulfed the head of Raiga. The blood-curdling scream to follow would haunt any man to cause it, but neither boy seemed to care as they jumped away. That was until the man burst into a pile of water, both of their tempers flaring. How damn it, where did he go? Shisui growled, his fists clenching tightly. All Itachi could do was growl, all of these emotions were beyond normal for the usually composed boy. Ao looked at them with an apologetic eye, leave it be, he's not here anymore, and there's something bigger going on than that flunky, the advisor said, both Uchiha immediately glaring at him. But, the fire left their eyes as they looked past him to the two gigantic beasts battling within the center of the village. He summoned him, you don't think Shisui asked, looking to his fellow Uchiha. Itachi nodded, if Naruto has summoned Ein Dono, then he intends to free the yondaime of his tenant, the normally silent young man looked to the battle somberly. It distinctively reminds me of the Kyuubi attack, almost too much. Naruto won't go out like his old man, and don't you start thinking he will team, Shisui gave his best friend a hard look, then turned his Mangekyo to Ao. Look after my Amato, let's go Itachi, we need to see if we can help him somehow. Itachi shook his head, it's already over, Shisui, he declared, distinctively staring at large beasts. Senpo. Uzumaki Hijutsu. Tentai Haki Fuin. Sage Style. Uzumaki Hidden Technique. Heavenly Body 8 Trigram Seal. Everything and everyone seemed to halt as the blonde's powerful voice coupled with the wolf's rung out through the artificial forest. It was almost instantaneous, the three-tailed turtle being pulled towards Naruto, into his chest. When the gargantuan creature was all but gone, the lifeless form of Yugura fell from high in the sky, rocketing towards the ground. After the beast was fully sealed, the wolf made to collapse before disappearing, Naruto falling from his place just as still and motionless as the yondaime. Naruto. Several voices rang out, but the first to reach him and stop his descent was Mei. The buxom woman, grasping him tightly to her chest as tears streamed down her cheeks. "You damned idiot, why would you do something like that?" she cried, now more worried for the boy than ever before. "For you and your people," Kakashi said, appearing behind her, looking at Izutado with a heavy heart. "He's that much like his parents, to sacrifice himself for the prosperity of the ones he cherishes, and even the ones he doesn't," he sighed, placing a hand on the boy's head. "He's lucky it was the Sanbi he did this with and not the six or higher, it may have killed him, Uzumaki or not. How does a boy so young have so much power, how does he even know how to seal a Biju?" Mei cried, almost unable to accept the burden Naruto had taken on his shoulders. "His teacher is Jiraiya of the Sannin, he has also studied under Tsunade and Uchiha and myself," he smiled proudly at the still unconscious, selfless boy. "And, the reason he has so much power is because he has so much to protect." And Nai-san, the blonde in her arms, groaned, weakly opening his eyes to look at the man. "Is everyone safe?" He cringed at the pain racing through his body. Kakashi's sad eyes gave him all the answer he needed, he hadn't been quick enough. "We'll talk about that later, Atado, for now sleep," he whispered, tapping the blonde's forehead, forcing the sleep upon the blonde. "I'll carry him, let's go check on the rest of my team." When they got back to where they had left the Uchiha, some were surprised to not see the body of Raiga anywhere. Only the small bundle of black flames burning in a puddle of water. The boys themselves were sitting on either side of Izumi, the two Kirin giving them a respectful distance. Mei looked to Ao for the verdict, Kakashi silently praying for a miracle, but the negative nod that followed was what he knew was coming. After all, one could only awaken the Mangekyo after a true loss, and somehow the Ire wielder could tell if it wasn't. "Are you sure?" Kakashi heard Shisui sniffle, the girl beneath him nodding weakly in a pool of her own blood. I'm so sorry Izumi, I can't apologize enough to you Amato," he heaved, gripping her hand with all his heartbreak. "It's okay, Shisui Nai-chan," she panted out, looking up and over towards the unconscious blonde. "This way, he'll be able to see again, and in some way, I'll be there when his dream comes true." The words nearly made Kakashi drop his Achuoto, a very sensitive memory of him getting his Sharingan assaulting him. He couldn't help a tear that fell down his cheek, both at the memory and the girl's wish. "Itachi-kun," the weeping boy immediately squeezed her chilling hand to let her know he was there. He couldn't trust his voice right now. "Why you have the most sense. I'm trusting you to look after these Bibakas and tell Mikoto Obasama that I'm sorry, too," she requested, and all he could do was nod repeatedly to the brunette Uchiha closest to his heart. "Ao-san, I need you to take out my Amato's eyes and replace Naruto's damaged eye with one, the other I will keep," Shisui whispered, his voice devoid of any emotion as he looked somberly at the girl. None had noticed that Zabuza had appeared, being sure to silence his apprentice, a short brown-haired boy, as he took in what was happening. "Zabuza-sama, what's happening?" the young boy whispered, having mostly hidden during all the fighting. Zabuza knelt down beside the boy, a gentle hand on his small head. "This is the life of shinobi, Haku, one moment you're there, and the next you could be gone. It's unfortunate and it hurts a lot, but it's our world," he whispered, not wanting to disturb the process as Ao did what was asked of him. A few moments later, Ao looked to the girl's brother, not offering him any pity as he knew it was unwanted. "It's done, the other is here," he said, handing him a small vial. "She doesn't have much longer left, take as long as you need, Shisui-san." With that said, he stood and returned to his place, once more at a respectful distance. "If you could all just leave me here with her," he silently asked, and Itachi was the first to stand, giving her hand one more squeeze before letting go. He walked away quietly, his face a mask devoid of anything notable. The rest followed shortly, none intending to belay the boy his simple request. From the moment they all left to the moment Izumi drew her last breath, Shisui sat and wept with her gently held to his chest. A week later, bleary eyes opened to blurry white paneling above him. Things began flooding into his mind and the boy shot up, ignoring any pain he felt as his hand went to his right eye. The orb widened when he suddenly found himself able to see his fingers before his eye. "How," he hoarsely whispered, and then memories, not his own, assaulted him, and like that tears began to flow from his eyes. "So, I suppose there's no point in telling you," a hollow voice questioned, and Naruto looked up to see the emotionless face of Shisui, an unshed tear in his eye. The shaggy-haired boy stood suddenly, putting his hand on the blonde's shoulder. "It was her dying wish to give you her eye, so that you could see again and in some way she could be there when our dream came true." He spoke softly and lightly as to not hurt his friend, it was the last thing he wanted to do. He was tired of hurting and seeing people hurt. Not hearing a word from the blonde, he looked only to gasp at seeing a mangekyou swirling in his sister's gift to the blonde, tears pouring from it. "She's given you something many nanachiha before you have lusted for, promise me you'll take care of it," he said, not really asking. "And, no matter what, I want you to swear to me that you'll make our dream a reality." His answer came in two parts, possibly the most determined look he personally had seen in Naruto's eyes. "For Izumi," the blonde whispered, making Shisui smile somberly. The curly-haired Uchiha bent down slightly and hugged his best friend before standing straight and excusing himself. Naruto, left alone, found himself staring out the window of the hospital, one building spared by his rampage. He began thinking back to his fight, and not just the fractals of images the Sharingan had given him of Izumi's last request. The way he was, there was no way he could have possibly done anything faster, and as much as he wanted to blame himself for Izumi, he knew deep in his heart it would only insult her memory, and he refused to do that. He was brought from those thoughts by the door opening behind him, catching the hue of auburn hair in the reflection of the glass window. "I'm glad to see you awake, Naruto-kun." Terumi-Mei wasn't an often meek woman, but standing before this man, it made her so. But, she steeled herself, knowing how much she owed the selfless man, and sat down gingerly beside him. The blonde looked her over, giving off his first smile since opening his eyes. "I suppose I may have gone a bit overboard on your village," he joked, a small smirk playing at his lips. He was rewarded with warm laughter from the girl, seemingly washing away any prior nerves. "It's okay," she smiled, looking out over the place she had called home so long ago. "Many of us on the side of the rebellion have many bad memories here, myself included. A civil war does that, I suppose. Not to mention the bloodline purge, it will be a welcome step to renovate our home and breathe new life into it, I think." The words earned a small smile from Naruto, but it turned to a look of shock when he felt her gently clasp his hand. "Thank you for everything you've done for us. I couldn't repay you in 1,000 years if I tried," she whispered, Naruto for the first time in his life taking notice of the blush gracing a woman's cheeks. "For killing Yagura, you gave us our freedom. For sealing the Sanbi within yourself, you saved a member of our next generation the burden. For all of us you, a Konoha shinobi, were the hero we all needed," she smiled before catching his cheek with her lips, just like when they had met. "I admire you greatly, Naruto-kun, and if you'd allow me with the time you'll be remaining here, I'd enjoy getting to know you, as much of you as I can." Naruto chuckled, a blush now gracing his own cheeks. "I'd like that very much, Mei-chan." "Promise me you'll visit before too long," Mei whispered. It had been another month that the Konoha Anbu had stayed. In that time, she had grown even more attached to her village's hero, spending nearly every moment not in meetings with him. She felt her face heat as the blonde gave her that wolfish smirk, gently brushing a strand of her long hair with his rough hand. "I will, and if there's anything you need you have one of my seals," he smiled, clasping both her hands in his. "It'll take a lot of chakra to use it over such a great distance, but I'll make the sacrifice for you," he chuckled, earning a cute pout from the gaudy elect. She reached up and slapped his chest, earning more laughter. "You're lucky, I know you're kidding." The Kunoichi then moved her hand over the seal now hidden by his Anbu gear. "Keep it hidden, some would want to use you for its power, not to mention your own." In response the blonde cupped her face in both his hands before placing a kiss on her forehead and then moving to her lips. Ao and Kakashi abruptly fainted, and that was before they deepened the kiss. Itachi and Shisui gave small smiles, both happy for their dearest friend outside of their clan. Zabuza chuckled, breaking the moment by walking up and clapping the blonde on his back. The Mizukage and Wolf broke the kiss, the Anbu grinning at his newfound friend, while Mei glared heatedly at the swordsman. Now Mizukage-sama, I think you two broke the blatant and closet perverts," he chuckled, jabbing a thumb over his shoulder at the two. The Mizukage for her part could only roll her eyes before happily taking the slightly taller blonde in an embrace. "I'll miss you, Naruto-kun," she whispered into him, nuzzling her face into his warm chest. "I'll miss you too, Mei-chan," he smiled before brushing his hand through her hair one last time before stepping back. He walked towards the faint Kakashi, hefting him over his shoulder with surprised ease. "Alright guys, I've got Kakabaka, let's meet up with the rest of the battalion on the border." The Uchiha nodded simply, taking up position behind their second in command and placing their hands on his shoulder. "Till next time, Zabuza, Mei-chan," he gave them his signature smirk, disappearing with all three teammates in tow, just like they'd never been there to begin with. "You're thinking about him banging you, aren't you?" Zabuza jibed, noticing the pink blush become scarlet before all hell broke loose, ending with Zabuza in the hospital for a whole week. Naruto rolled his eyes, listening to Kakashi and Shisui go on and on about the perverted sage's new book just announced. They weren't even an hour away from the village at this point, and all the two could think about was going to pick up their own copy. But, the blonde did have to admit, it at the very least took Shisui's mind from the late Izumi, and he was thankful for that. "Perverts," Itachi huffed, earning a chuckle from the blonde. If I remember right, Mikoto-sensei said something about finding those same books in your room. His teasing grin instantly made his rival deflate proportionately. Damn it, Ka-san, he growled. The last thing he needed was his annoying blonde best friend knowing something or anything like that. Naruto laughed boisterously, Itachi allowing himself to see the contrast between his friend's eyes. Has it been giving you any trouble? Naruto calmed at the question, not even having to ask what the stoic boy meant. No, for some reason it's not giving me the same problem Kakashi has with his own, where I would need to cover it, he sighed, placing his hand over the eye, experimentally activating it. It's rather odd to see things like this, his inquisitive nature was plain to see. Itachi knew it was why the blonde was always working on something new. And will probably be excited at the opportunity to train you again. I think the life of a stay-at-home mother has given her some depression, Itachi chuckled, earning a scoff from the blonde. I never did expect Mikoto-sensei to actually retire to a point. She loved being a shinobi. Naruto shook his head, remembering times he and his old team had been on missions with her. Itachi nodded, my father demanded as much, he'll have something to say about your new eye as well, the heir warned, making Naruto growl. The blonde wasn't very fond of the Uchiha patriarch, something just never sat right with him about the man. Before he could voice as much, Shisui spoke up, he says anything, and I'll kill him, the young man promised, flaring his mangekyou for extra measure. Man, that's kind of badass, I need to learn how to do that, Naruto, as flippant as ever, said looking in awe at the eyes. Shisui and Itachi both face vaulted at the way he ignored the comment, Kakashi only chuckling, beyond used to Naruto's antics. I personally can't wait to tell Tsunade-sama about Itao's new girlfriend, he chuckled, immediately ducking under the katana thrown like a kunai at his head. His breathing hitched however as he felt a very memorable shift behind him, looking out the corner of his eye to now see Naruto's mix-matched stare glaring at him like an oni. I will end your own eye, he growled, and Kakashi couldn't help but to compare him to his sensei, back when the Anbu captain was much younger. The Haddock held his hands up in surrender, fair enough, he chuckled nervously, when had his little brother gotten so scary. Regardless, don't worry about Tusama, Ka-san will put her foot down, and that will be the end of it, Itachi said, earning a scoff from the blonde. Your old man couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag, the Uzumaki heir insulted, Itachi shrugging in response. The old saying is don't anger a senju or Uchiha, the Uchiha replied, earning an eye roll from his rival. And don't underestimate an Uzumaki, the blonde countered, earning a touche, in response. However, all four quieted seeing the village gates come into view, along with a battalion of shinobi that had traveled ahead of them. Standing there just able to see the home they hadn't in many months was enough to bring a smile to each of their faces, even if a tinge of sadness could be seen for their ally that hadn't made it back with them. Before any could take another step forward, Naruto was suddenly bombarded by a crimson and blonde blur, causing a loud grunt to emit from him. Silently noting the steady hand on his shoulder that prevented him from falling. Nai-san, the crimson-haired blur had cried, followed shortly by a Naruto-chan, from the blonde. Sorry Gaki, they've been waiting at the gates ever since word came back you were returning, a voice he already knew spoke from behind him, earning a smile from the blonde at the arrival of his family. It's okay, Iro-senin, I've been waiting for this too, the blonde chuckled returning the embrace of Menma and Tsunade respectively. Itachi was in a very similar situation, being fretted over by his Ka-san and bombarded with questions from his Itato. Shisui and Kakashi stood to the side, both smiling fondly at the scene. Hey there tall dark and handsome, a familiar Inyazuka Hana jibed as her hand smacked the rear of Shisui. The Uchiha was immediately scarlet in color, chastising her for what she had done, only inciting a giggle from the girl. Good to see you not breeding after such a long mission, Kaka-chan, Kakashi gulped at the oddly seductive tone in his ear, it would seem he has already been found, Kami damn it. The Haddock chuckled nervously, oheo, Anko-san, he gulped when a kunai appeared at his neck, releasing a small eep sound. Oh, does Anko-chan have to teach her Inubaka how to properly address her again? The tone had Jiraiya giggling perversely as he scribbled in his ever-present notebook. And now, Anko-chan, please don't go to any extremes, Kakashi gulped, shuddering when the woman promised to find him after her shift before disappearing. He sighed, that was more than enough time for him to get his book and disappear before the snake woman could find him. The silver-haired shinobi only wished he could understand what he had done to attract the, admittedly sexy crazy woman's attention to such loyalty. Akabaka, Naruto shook his head with a laugh, as Menma finally released him, being the last to do so. Nai-san, what happened to your eye? It's black like Itachi Nai and Shisui Nai's, the rambunctious crimson-haired academy student noted, noticing his question had brought a somber look to his brother's eyes. Not only his, but Itachi and Kakashi's as well, Shisui looked like he wanted to nearly cry. The eldest male Uchiha was very aware of how close his baby sister had been to the youngest Uzumaki. Often having trained him well Naruto was too busy with missions, even taking him on numerous dates, for Raymond. It was why Shisui moved to the boy, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder, despite the raging sadness biting at him. A lot of bad things happened on our mission, Menma-kun, he whispered, struggling to find the right way to put it. But every adult had caught on, Mikoto and Hana having fresh tears well up in their eyes. Shisui had not wanted to tell either of them in writing, feeling it to be the wrong way. Izumi Yamato didn't make it back, he choked out, seeing the tears freely pouring from Menma's violet eyes. But Naruto had lost his eye prior to that, and her wish was to let him use one of hers in its place. His tears were free-flowing as well as he spoke his sister's last wish. But Menma surprised him as he often did and just hugged him, the life out of him in fact. It was a welcome action to the heartbroken brother, and many, even the teary-eyed members smiled however small at the scene. The young Sasuke was surprised to see so much emotion not only from his cousin, but his brother as well. He didn't like seeing that pain on Itachi's face. For some reason, he really didn't like seeing his rival Menma so saddened either. He wasn't close to Izumi, but he was close to those three and Naruto. The tears he shed were for them, not the girl lost he didn't have an attachment to. Mikoto left her son's side, walking up and taking Naruto into a hug that surprised the boy, Hana joining soon after. If anyone knew how close Naruto was to his female genin teammates, it was her, and just being in contact with him, the Uchiha matriarch could feel the restrained storm of emotions within. I'll start your training in the Sharingan as soon as you're ready, we'll make sure Izumi-chan's last wish is honored no matter what, she vowed, earning a silent nod from the boy as he returned the embrace and wept silently. The Sandaime stood a fair distance ahead of the small group, his eyes remorseful at the scene. Anything like this always weighed heavily on him. The loss of any shinobi was his responsibility as the leader, protector and, in his mind, father of the village and her people. Kakashi had informed him a month prior, while Naruto was recovering, and decided to honor Shisui's wish to allow him to tell people. It was the least he could have done for a team who had sacrificed so much for their prosperity and new alliance. Team Inu, report to my office when you're done here for your debriefing, he ordered, earning nods from each of them. So, you've mastered the Shodai's technique to such an extent, it's remarkable Naruto-kun, he smiled, then looked over the rest of the team. Each of you performed above and beyond the call of duty, you'll be granted SSS rank pay for it, on top of the agreed upon amount sent from the new leadership of Kurigakure, he smiled, all four gaping at the announcement. That was enough pay for any of them to retire for a few months and live the highest of lives. However, due to the extent of loss and everything that has affected this team, I'm forcing you all to step down from Anbu status for a time of at least 2 years. Now this surprised all of them even more. It wasn't often an entire squad was demoted. Especially not one of their level and overall power, not even to mention their success rate. What of the council, Hokage-sama, they'll surely fight you on this, Shisui noted, not in the least bit against a demotion after all he'd been through. They can kiss my wrinkled ass, their influence does not outweigh my decision, but that does bring up another point, he said, staring at the blonde. Your tenant will be classed to SSS rank secret, if anyone outside of this room speaks of it, they're to be put to death immediately, unless you deem them trustworthy enough to share the information of course, the Sandaime said, earning a nod from the blonde. You'll also be present in the next Shinobi Council meeting, you've long since earned the right to everything within your parents' estate, and terms for you to take up duty as clan heir will be decided. I thought I was already in possession of everything, Naruto questioned, earning a chuckle from the aged Cage. You have been given what I, or rather the council, hasn't been able to prevent my students from teaching and giving you, Hiruzen said, packing his pipe with tobacco before lighting it and taking a puff. There is much within your mother's and father's estate that will change the face of this village, secrets will come to light long since kept from the time of the Nidaime. Prepare yourself, the meeting will be in a month's time. Naruto and the Uchihas stood shell-shocked at the victorious eyes of the Hokage. It was like seeing a man place check after such a long battle of strategy. Kakashi knew it wasn't just check, but in fact would be checkmate. To the greatest darkness the village has been influenced by since Uchiha Madara. Being Jiraiya-sama's eyes within the village at all times had given him enough to surmise as much. Alright team, you heard Hokage-sama, dismissed, Kakashi said, his lazy mask ever present. However, he was completely intent on going and buying his new book. He was happy to leave what was to come out of his hands, as that was none of his business unless made so. Plus, he had a snake woman to escape. A week later found Naruto relaxing in the Senju training ground he and Menma had always trained in, thanks to living with Tsunade. He was laying back on Ain, having trained quite brutally with the original Akami Sennin for most of the morning. He was calmly watching as Menma trained himself, fighting several clones atop the large pond. The blonde was silently proud that his academy student brother was proficient enough to water walk, being both in Uzumaki and Jinchuriki, chakra control would always be the boy's nemesis. He chuckled softly, wondering how much longer he'd wait before beginning to teach Menma their father's famed technique, the Rasengan. After being forced to leave the ranks of Anbu, Naruto had taken to wearing an attire similar in part to his old one. For a shirt, he wore a plain and simple long-sleeved black shirt with a turtleneck, however what made it unique was the fact it lacked the right sleeve, similar to the attire some Iwanin wore. Proudly emblazoned on his back was the Uzumaki clan symbol, however it had changed, as now it included a blue lotus overlapping its bottom half, taken from the Namikaze clan symbol his father was born to. His pants were black as well, taped at the ankles and tucked into a pair of black shinobi boots. These boots were special because of the tanto holstered in the calf-high material. On his right forearm was a black steel bracer, a silver 3D wolf's head emblazoned on it, signifying his tie to the tribe. It had actually been a gift from the tribe leader, Shiro-sama, the only Wolfine answered to. The blonde chuckled when he heard his brother's cheers, having beaten down 40 clones without losing focus on controlling his chakra once. It was hard for even Naruto to believe how quick his Itaudo had been growing and learning, he wasn't even 9 years of age yet. "Boy, Baka no Menma, want to spar?" Naruto raised his brow at the new voice, before smiling at the sight of his old sensei and her youngest. "Sasu-chan, be nice to Menma-kun, you wouldn't want your Aniki beating you up would you?" Mikoto teasingly scolded her adorable son. The boy instantly paled, looking over to the relaxing Uzumaki and his wolf, who smirked wolfishly at him. "You two have fun, Naruto-kun and I would be training, so be sure to stay vigilant of your surroundings, nah." "Hi, Mikoto Onibaba-sama," the Uchiha matriarch, only giggled as Naruto paled when his Itaudo called the scary woman a demon granny. But, he was further shocked when the only response Mikoto gave was to dote over the loudmouth baby brother of his. Even Sasuke was looking at his mother as if she had grown a second head, but knew better than to question her, and went in a sprint at the crimson-haired boy. The spar quickly devolved into a tussle, making Naruto and Mikoto chuckle as they watched the boys roll around. "Well, they'll be busy for the next 2 days if we let them. Activate your Sharingan, it's time to work." Naruto did as commanded, but was surprised when an Anbu wearing the mask of a monkey appeared, bowing before him. "Naruto Taicho, Hokage-sama has requested your presence as soon as possible, please do not delay," the blonde sighed, before nodding at the man and thanking him. "Forgive me, Mikoto-sensei, I'll summon you again tomorrow morning," Naruto said, picking up his katana and securing it to his back. "You can try, I'm taking the day off Gaki, train with the Uchiha then," the wolf grunted, dispersing in a cloud of smoke. "Well then, I guess I'll see you tomorrow, Naruto-kun," Mikoto smiled, earning a small smile from the blonde. "When your meeting comes, just ignore my husband, he's always cranky," she giggled, once again proving to Naruto she was just a loyal woman and not overly fond of the man she was married to. "Until then sensei, and as you say," he smiled, before vanishing in a lightning shunshin. She smiled, of her 3 students Naruto had always been her strongest and fastest growing. At the age most genin went through their first failure of a Chunin exam, the blonde had already mastered the use of 3 elements and his father's Rasengan, not mentioning his Mokuton or summoning contract, or the Kenjutsu she had helped him with. She knew with her Uchiha students passing, the girl had given Naruto the final nail in the coffin of any foolish enough to face him alone. "I wonder how strong those 2 will grow," she smiled, looking at the 2 children, one resembling her and the other resembling her dead best friend, Kushina. "You'd be so proud of your sons, Kushi-chan, Minato Baka," she smiled to the heavens, hoping those 2 could see them all now. Naruto appeared in the window of the Hokage's office, Sarutobi beyond used to this behavior from a handful of his shinobi. "Itachi, Shisui, what are you guys doing here?" the blonde asked, earning serious looks from both of them. Seeing an equally serious look from the Hokage, Naruto shut the window behind him, signaling to the hidden Anbu to vacate the room before activating silencing seals. "It's the hawk, isn't it?" Hiruzen nodded. "Among other things, Maid Dono has been inaugurated as the Gade Mizukage and will be here in a week's time to sign the alliance pact. You will be assigned as her protection to accompany your allies from the rebellion who will come. But, Itachi-kun and Shisui-kun have brought new movement to my attention." His wizened eyes hardened at this, but nearly widened in shock when Naruto flicked out a Raiten-enhanced kunai, the body of an Anbu with an unmarked mask, falling down with a hole through his chest. "He won't take kindly to you killing his pawn, Naruto-kun," the Hokage admonished, earning a hardened glare from the blonde. "I've ignored his attempts to take Menma, as ordered by you, but if he's becoming this daring I'll no longer hold back, Hokage Jiji," he growled, and the old man smirked, lighting his pipe. "Patience, Naruto-kun, what Itachi and Shisui have brought me proves we're making him antsy, which means he'll slip up soon. He won't say anything about his destroyed pawn this time, he expected as much most likely, but we won't be able to back him in the corner like Jiraiya and I have planned." The old man finally hardened his eyes as he looked at the blonde. "Now, patience, and I promise you this will be handled." "So, what's he got planned?" the blonde asked, staring to his closest friends. 2 weeks later, just a few days shy of the scheduled council meeting, found Naruto standing at the gates of Konohagakure, his hands in his pockets and his brother at his side. "Shouldn't you be in class?" the blonde mused, the crimson-haired boy snickering. Iruka-sensei was just droning on about history. Naruto Nai, I already know all that thanks to you and Bachan, he grinned childishly, using one of Jiraiya's ridiculous faces. Besides, I want to meet Nai-chan's girlfriend, he said in a sing-song voice, earning him an immediate punch to the top of his head. Insolent Gaki, the blonde growled, making sure his crumbled brother was still breathing. He might have accidentally channeled a bit too much chakra into that punch. Mean Nai-chan, the blonde cried, waterfall tears escaping his bulging eyes. Go back to class or I'll give you another, the blonde growled, before the crimson-haired boy jumped to life and sped off. If there was one thing the boisterous brat feared, it was his brother's legendary anger. Pain in the ass. I think he's rather cute, Naruto-kun, a voice answered, making him smile. Mizukage Dono, it's good to see you well, he smiled brightly, nodding to Zabuza and Chijuro, the younger of the two now sporting a legendary blade himself. Mei smiled at the blonde, not being shy about embracing him. It left a few Konoha citizens who knew Naruto shell-shocked. It wasn't often the blonde gave girls the time of day. I'm happy to see you too, next time don't send your Itato away, I'd very much like to meet him, she admonished, earning a sheepish grin from the teen only 2 years her junior. Omen, Mei-chan, he rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Follow me and I'll introduce you to the Hokage, he asked, earning a nod from her as she skipped to his side and hooked his arm. If Ao was here she would have already told him to shut his mouth or she'd kill him, Zabuza was sure of it. The exact reason the bandaged swordsman decided to keep his and Chijuro's mouth clamped tight. The last thing he wanted was to get punched halfway back to Kiri. It turned out to be quite the surprise to many villagers around them as they walked to see such a beautiful kunoichi clamped to Naruto's arm, not that any of them knew she was the newly instated Mizukage, they weren't aware of most delegations from other villages until weeks had passed. But, the Hokage was aware of exactly who the leak of military intel and happenings to the general populace was, now just left catching them. Konoha is quite the beautiful village Naruto-kun, Mei smiled, eyeing a few of the restaurants that lined the market district, a flower shop, scroll shop, and several weapons shops filling the gaps. Most if not every place had vendors out front as well, selling their fresh goods for families and the like to purchase. Might be a nice retirement plan for me, should our agreement be fruitful. Naruto smiled, a wolfish smirk she had missed in their short time apart. I'm sure things will go well, Mei-chan, she had to admit to loving him, saying her name so fondly. It wasn't something she had imagined possible when she first met him and flirted with him just to tease him. But there was just something that drew her to the young man. Well, here we are, he smiled, gesturing to the large building with a smile on his face. Hokage-sama should be waiting and ready to meet with you, he added, walking up the stairs and in the building with the three in tow. They bypassed the usual system of being permitted further into the building, climbing several flights of stairs before standing in front of a simple wooden door. Though, Mei did notice quite a few nasty glares on their way, she figured due to her close proximity to the blonde. She happily and without a second thought, squeezed his arm closer to her and added an extra sway to her hips. Just to infuriate them more, or so she hoped. However, that changed as they got in front of the office and she released the blonde, Naruto absolutely understanding why. It wasn't every day you met the third man to be proclaimed Shinobi no Kami, and she wanted to give him her best impression. Enter, they heard after knocking on the door, coming to see the man look at the blonde with a confused look. Naruto-kun, I'm surprised you didn't bring them through the VIP entrance, he joked, jabbing a thumb at his window. Naruto chuckled sheepishly, the Anbu are used to me doing that, not my friends here, he said, earning a mirthful smile from his grandfather figure. Indeed, Hiruzen chuckled, standing from his chair and offering a hand to Mei. Terumi Mei, it is an honor to meet the Gade Mizukage, Naruto, and the others spoke highly of your prowess, he complimented, earning a smile from the woman as she accepted his hand. It's an honor to meet a shinobi with such a prestigious past as yours Hokage Dono, he smiled in return, gesturing towards the chair set up for her. The rest of you may use the couches provided there and help yourself to any refreshments you so desire, Hiruzen gestured, earning nods from each of the three young men, well young to him at least. Now then, Mizukage Dono, I have procured housing. If it's fine with you Hokage Dono, I would much rather stay with Naruto-kun during my stay here. Hiruzen's eyes widened slightly at the request, but nodded seeing a blushing blonde on one of the couches. Good, at least the brat was still focused on what was happening in the meeting, while he drank sake at 10 in the morning. Tsunade may not have been the best influence for the boy when it came to vices. That's fine, he lives in the Senju compound with Senju Tsunade and his brother, so there will be plenty of room for you three, the aged Hokage nodded, then flipped open a file. Now that is handled, shall we get into the finer details of our future agreement? I'll have to present it to the council in the coming days, which is why I asked you to stay so long. That's fine, Hokage Dono, I do not mind this reprieve from paperwork in my own council. Hiruzen gave her a look that said tell me about it, before the two dived into their work. Naruto sighed as the small group walked into the Senju clan compound, the Kirin Inn, marveling at the simple yet elegant buildings. I'll bring all of you to the main house and have you meet Tsunade Ba and Itato before showing you to the guest houses, the blonde said, noting that the sun had already begun to set, allowing a small yawn to escape his lips. The group walked behind him quietly, choosing to look at the large gardens and plant life almost encompassing every building, then to the large koi pond within the center of the biggest garden. May was trying to think of any time she'd seen such a beautiful layout, but it gave her some very good ideas for the updates coming to the mostly destroyed Kiri. "I'm home," Naruto called in as he opened the door, setting the example to remove their shoes. It wasn't long before the patter of quick footfalls could be heard, before a crimson blur slammed into the blonde taking him to his back. "Nai-chan, where have you been?" Menma asked, making the blonde chuckle before he explained he was on orders from their Jiji, earning an accepting nod from the boy. He then looked at the people with his brother, pausing at May, then looking to his brother with a grin. "Is that your girlfriend, Nai-chan?" he asked teasingly, earning a blush from both Shinobi and laugh from the imposing Zabuza. "I think I like this kid," the swordsman laughed out, setting his large Zanbatsu just outside of the entranceway. "Welcome, I was wondering when you all would be done with your meeting," the blonde-haired Tsunade said, walking into the area in her customary attire. May could feel the legendary medic's scrutinizing gaze on her and nearly gulped under the woman's eyes. "Tsunade-sama, it's an honor to meet a kunoichi of your prowess. You've given younger kunoichi like myself so much to aspire to," May bowed, Tsunade's scrutinizing glance faltering for a look of mild satisfaction. "Not bad, Naru-chan, I like this one," she smiled, earning a blush from May, who received an apologetic sheepish look from the blonde. "You boys will be staying in the guest house just across the breezeway of the east wing, May-san. I've prepared a room for you next to Naru-chan's room." Zabuza and Chijuro nodded in thanks, while May gulped at the knowing tone of the woman. "Please rest up, your schedules will be quite full the coming week I presume. Naru-chan, don't forget you, Jiraiya and I will have the preliminary meeting with the Shinobi Council tomorrow morning," she reminded, earning a nod from the boy before he hefted his Itato over his shoulders and went on his way to show everyone to their designated rooms. "I curse the idea, but I know how the Shinobi Council will be when we request to reinstate the Uzumaki clan and change it slightly, and I have a feeling that girl will be a lovely first wife for that gaki," Tsunade thought to herself, noting that the Mizukage was not only walking closely to the blonde but was already doting over little Menma. "The old pervert would be proud of you, Naruto," she thought with a smirk, returning to her office to prepare all the needed files for tomorrow. Many secrets would be coming to light tomorrow morning, and in a few days' time, she'd be able to savor the look of shock on those bastard elders' old wrinkled faces. "You expect us to believe that this boy is not only the descendant of the Shodai and Nidaime, but the heir of the entirety of the Uzumaki clan and all its assets?" Shimura Danzo slammed his hands on the table. This was not what he was expecting in the least. But, judging not only from the stern look of his ex-teammate but the documents before each of them, there was no denying it. Jiraiya was the hidden son of the Nidaime, who fathered Minato with the help of his unknowing cousin Senju Tsunade, which led way for Naruto's lineage. "I demand this boy be placed under the Clan Restoration Act, there is no other choice. The Mizukage, thanks to her council's request, will be the first of his wives." "How foolish of you to believe you have any jurisdiction to make such a demand of this council," Hyuga Hiashi scoffed at the man, beyond done with his attitude and shady actions. "Please Hyuga Dono, what more do you expect from the bumbling of the elders?" Uchiha Fugaku voiced, distaste clear in his voice, and it was rare that either of these clans agreed on anything. Each of the three retired shinobi glared at the man, who only returned it with fever. "Now, for the sake of instating him to the council, I am loathing to agree that the Kra is a needed course for 4 people a clan does not make," Nara Shikaku sighed, glaring at the aged hawk. "However, that is something we of the Shinobi Council must agree on, not our Hokage's advisors," he added, smirking when Danzo deflated slightly. "I agree," Akimichi Choza said, Yamanaka and Noichi nodding his own agreement. Soon most were adding their own agreements, the Aburame and Inyazuka being the only against, neither clan liked the idea. "For the sake of our alliance, Mizukage Dono, does this change anything with the agreement your council has requested of you and Naruto-kun?" Hiruzen asked, as much as he too hated the idea of forcing his grandson figure into multiple marriages. "I will accept this change, so long as Naruto-kun doesn't object," May nodded, not like she could change it much, and knowing her newly formed council, she was sure they would press the matter. It wasn't like they were forcing them to get married immediately, at least, requesting that May be allowed to fulfill her duty as Mizukage until a successor be chosen within a 5-year time frame. Naruto sighed, nodding his agreement, however reluctantly he was about this clause, even though he knew most men would kill to be in his shoes. May and an undetermined amount of other possibly beautiful wives. He could already imagine the line of drool coming from the corner of Jiraiya's mouth or the amount of research his newly announced grandfather would attempt to use him for. Hiruzen nodded. Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto will now take up his position as the first clan head of the newly reformed Uzumaki clan, the Hokage dictated, earning a bow from the blonde, already knowing that his informal hyphening of his parents' surnames would not reflect upon the overall name of his clan. He and Menma would be the only two to bear the Namikaze name. He couldn't fathom changing his surname to Senju because of his father's true lineage, it still didn't seem plausible to him. Now then, that leaves us the last topic of our meeting. There is no other topic on our schedule, Hiruzen, Danzo said, narrowing his non-bandaged eye at the man he called his rival. What are you getting at? Ah, Danzo, you're correct in a way, the Hokage nodded, waving his hand before several Anbu appeared surrounding each of the three elders. Then, just as quickly 5 Anbu with unmarked masks dropped to the ground dead, the sound of a tirade of birds chirping filling the room. Naruto and Kakashi standing on either side of the group of dead with a Chidori blaring in either of their hands. What is the meaning of this? Udatane Kahara raged, her eyes glaring at the stone-faced Hokage. Why have you done this, Hiruzen? Midokado Himura glared, however they were the only two of the three to say anything, Danzo just choosing to glare heatedly at all present. Now, Hiruzen glared at Danzo, releasing enough killing intent to break normal men and women. Why don't you explain a few things to me, starting with why Na is still in operation, he ordered, enjoying the glare Danzo fed him. Or rather, was, Jiraiya smirked, bursting into a cloud of smoke, making the Warhawk's eyes harden even more. Oh, that's right Danzo-sama, Naruto sneered the honorific, surprising the man with the amount of killing intent that radiated off one so young. Your base, and all those in your organization have been killed or captured, all of your documents seized, and will be utterly demolished within the next 5 minutes, he explained, dismissing the Chidori from his hand. Now, since you can't answer apparently, why don't you instead tell me what you've done to Shisui? The blonde's killing intent created cracks in the very floor around him, Izumi's Mangekyo spinning wildly into life. It would seem, you already know just what has become of your filthy Uchiha friend, Danzo glared, and Zabuza was actually the one to jump from Mei's side and stop her. The swordsman had no idea what had happened or what was going on, but he knew this was between Naruto and Danzo. So, you admit to killing him and stealing his eye, or maybe you'd like to admit to your attempts of having him stage the massacre of the Uchiha clan. The blonde glared harder than before, the Anbu moving back slightly as roots exploded from the ground, ensnaring the elder. Or maybe you'd like to go back further and speak of your attempts to abduct Mayatado, the roots tightened their grip. Or, how about the hundreds of other missing child reports that could be placed at your feet from each of the clans of our village? The council heard a pop as the roots began to crush the cartilage around the man's ribs, not yet squeezing tight enough to break bone. Fine, answer for your crimes this way, Tsukiyomi. Danzo widened his eyes as the world changed for him in the blink of an eye. There was no counter he could pull for this, it was one of the most powerful techniques of the Mangekyo. When Naruto dropped the Genjutsu, which lasted 72 hours for the man and only lasted a few seconds in actuality. The blonde didn't even care to turn and see the surprised look of Fugaku that he had mastered the technique. He was too concerned with the panting man before him, that torture would have broken any normal man. So, it's true then, Naruto said before snatching the bandage from Danzo's face and closing his regular blue eye. That isn't Shisui's Mangekyo, Hokage-sama. It belonged to our old teammate, Uchiha Kagami, who suspiciously went missing on a mission with this traitor, Hiruzen growled, the other two elders surprised by this turn of events. But, a scream broke through their throats as Naruto ripped the eye clean from the man's socket, without even so much as a flinch. Another crime to lay at your feet, how far into this darkness did you fall, Shimura Danzo? The blonde glared, allowing his hate for this man to show as he looked over the eye. The retired shinobi for his part could only glare at the boy, he knew the brat could deactivate his suicide seal if he tried it, the boy outmatched even his years of training in Fuinjutsu. Izuna were dead, and now Kagami's Sharingan had been taken as well, his last ace. Well then, everyone but Itachi, Kakashi and the Kiri party were surprised at how quickly Naruto's katana was unsheathed. There's no further point in allowing your miserable existence, Naruto said with dead eyes before cleanly slashing the man's head from his shoulders. Just as he had killed the man, the Anbu killed his supporters in all but the killing of their old teammate. Mission complete, Hokage-sama, he said, after sealing away the 3 bodies. Thank you for your work, Captain Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto, your retirement from the Anbu is finalized, Hiruzen nodded, still rather hurt that he had to order this done. Your mission to protect the Mizukage, or rather your fiancé, is now your only active mission. Otherwise, you'll be on leave for the next few weeks, he said, earning an accepting nod from the young man. Hokage-sama, what of my nephew's eyes? Fugaku asked, still perturbed that he wasn't the one to kill Shimura. I have hidden one away, the other will be given to Naruto, to-sama, Itachi explained, his eyes daring his father to question him. The Uchiha head sighed, I suppose you have done quite a lot to earn the respect and loyalty of the younger Uchiha, he begrudgingly admitted, not understanding why his son refused to follow his teaching of clan before village. It was fine, his own plans hadn't been halted by the changes here today, nor by his son. The man took that moment to leave, others filing out before it was just Naruto, Tsunade, Kakashi, Itachi, Hiruzen and the Kiri group. The blonde let a sigh escape his lips before looking at Mei and then to her two bodyguards, "You two take the day off," he pointed at them, then pointed at Mei. "How does lunch and maybe dinner later sound?" The auburn-haired woman blinked her jade-green eyes owlishly before beaming and taking his hand in hers in the blink of an eye. "That sounds lovely, Naru-kun," she beamed, the earlier happenings lay forgotten as the duo vanished. "The Taudo is such a real man," Kakashi cried in tears, beyond proud of his brother in all but blood. Tsunade rolled her eyes, why did that pervert of hers have to corrupt so many? "Boy, quit your babbling, let's go have a spar," Zabuza said to the silver-haired pervert, getting a confused look from the man before a shrug. Chijuro went with them, hoping to be able to learn something new from his mentor. "Tsunade, Itachi-kun, will you two accompany me to see what all has been recovered?" the cage asked, both nodding before following the man to his office. Harumi Mei smiled as she rested her mane of long auburn spikes on the shoulder of Naruto, reminiscing her time not only with the boy in his village, but her time with him, since she had met him in her country. They sat silently atop the stone-carved face of the Yondaime Hokage, staring into the star-filled sky above them, much like they had stared into the starry night many times within Kurigakure. "I'm sorry," he suddenly whispered, closing his eyes with a sigh. She let a small sad smile come to her pale face. "There's no reason to be, Naruto-kun," she whispered, nuzzling closer to his warmth. "You're the goddamn Mizukage, with the ability to love any man lucky enough to have you, yet your village is shipping you off to marry a man that will have to marry multiple women," he sighed, which turned into a yelp when she pinched the back of his bicep. "I chose you," her voice was firm, so firm that it demanded Naruto meet those fiery green eyes of hers. "Even if my council had not recommended this path to ensure the alliance between our homes, I would have chosen you. There is nothing to apologize for, least of all this," she left no room for argument, making the blonde sigh. "You're a very hard-headed woman, you know that?" he asked, earning a proud smirk from the Mizukage. "The perfect woman for a hot-headed hero, wouldn't you say?" she countered, making him chuckle with his own smirk. "And don't you dare ask if I'm sure, my mind is made up." He laughed as she buried her head back into his shoulder, both having the rare opportunity to act like the teenagers they still were. "I guess it helps that Menma has already taken a shining to you, and you him," he smiled, fondly thinking of the times he'd shared with the two in the past several days following the council meeting and the death of Shimura Danzo and the other two elders. "I'd kill for that boy just the same as I'd kill to protect you, Naruto-kun," she promised, making him smile again. "I know, thank you," she blushed, feeling his lips press against her soft hair. Silence flooded between them for a few moments, the two just enjoying the scenery, until Mei finally broke the silence with an apology of her own. "I'm sorry that I'll have to be leaving you soon, the work of Mizukage calls," she chuckled bitterly, and he shrugged lazily. "I'm sure there will be reason for you to return before long, and like I said, if the need ever arises, you have my seal to call me to you. Just remember that distance is going to leave me pretty depleted," he chuckled, and she smiled. "I won't use it unless I need to. I don't want to pull you away from Menma-kun, he's missed you a lot." He could pick up the regret in her tone, most likely blaming herself for the time apart for the brothers. "Menma is a tough spirit, he'll give me hell for being away so long, but he knows it was for the best and that it was my duty to complete my mission, no matter how long it took," he reassured her, before looking down to the silent village below them. "I lost a lot being there, but it was to stop the suffering of people, and like me, Menma wants that to stop at all costs. I'll always be thankful to you and your team for those losses," she said, allowing a small bit of sadness into her eyes as she too looked over the quiet village. Her mind wandering to the departed Izumi for a moment, remembering all she had done and her final sacrifice. The blonde finally sighed after a long moment of silence. "You've got a long trip ahead of you tomorrow, Mizukage-sama, we should head home." The formal way he addressed her made the girl glare, knowing full well he did it to purposefully mess with her. "Why don't we go get a drink instead, Uzumaki Namikaze-sama," she countered, her slim finger pointing to a location of the village with some life still in it. "I assume there's a bar of some sort down there." Naruto sighed. "There is, are you sure you don't want to rest instead?" "I'm sure," she said, standing effortlessly before dragging him up alongside her. The blonde let out another lazy sigh, before making both of them vanish with his jutsu. "And you're sure of this?" Hiruzen asked, looking worriedly to the young man and older woman before him. Osamu Ichiha Mikoto nodded slowly. "All of the reports are true, I've seen why he has been acting so strangely with my own eyes now," she frowned, hating what she had been forced to see by her son. "He's fallen and taken half of the clan into his dark machinations. I'll handle this myself." Itachi frowned, making the Hokage shake his head. "No, Fugaku alone could handle you, Itachi-kun," the man admitted, looking up to the eyes of his subordinate. "Your father is in possession of the next level of the Mangekyo Sharingan, unperturbed by the drawbacks my old friend Kagami once told me of. You will need assistance and I don't just mean you, Mikoto. You want to involve Naruto-kun, don't you? The woman asked, or rather stated, her frown deepening only for the man to nod. You trained him to fight Sharingan and to use the Dijutsu, I believe you will need him, he recalled, earning a nod from the woman, however reluctant. The last thing she wanted to do was involve her student into even more bloodshed, knowing full well he'd been through more of it than many his age. My husband will be my own problem, I will not force my son or student to clean up my mess, she firmly spoke, earning a nod of acceptance from the man. We must wait for the Mizukage to leave, I don't want her or her forces caught in the fighting. We'll move tomorrow, we can't take the risk of the Mizukage getting involved, Uchiha Fugaku spoke into the darkness, his eyes trained on a singular glowing crimson orb. Should we fail, I'll do as we agreed upon. Good, a deep voice replied, his smirk hidden by not only the darkness, but a strange mask. With that blonde gaki in the village, I expect you to, but he shall be handled eventually. Uzumaki Namika's Naruto won't be of any threat to me. You're a fool if you truly believe that, keep your wits about you and don't make any mistakes, the man warned, cutting off his words. I have places to be, and things to do. With that the man was gone, like he'd never been there, leaving Fugaku glaring at the place he had been. Naruto grunted as Mei slammed him against the door they had just stumbled through, her lips assaulting his own. His hands pulling her tightly to him by the small of her back, one trailing down to firmly grasp her bottom, eliciting a moan from her. The two were so engrossed with themselves that neither heard the patter of two sets of feet coming to investigate. Neither caring less as Naruto's other hand found her firm ass, lifting her up for the woman to wrap her long legs around his midsection. Her arms were already around his neck, her fingers working through his spiky blonde hair. As the footsteps grew closer, the oblivious Menma was prepared to shout his greeting at the two before a hand clasped over his mouth, another finding his violet eyes. Tsunade was the one to prevent her youngest grandson from seeing the fruition of teenage hormones at work as she quickly retreated to where they had come. Slightly wishing she had another pair of hands to cover Menma's ears so as to not hear as the Mizukage moaned his brother's name. Naruto, her breathing hitched as the blonde broke the kiss, assaulting her neck with his lips and teeth. The blonde had already turned the tables on her, now having her back to the door as he bit the nape of her neck before trailing the tip of his tongue up into her chin before nipping there. Mei let out another moan before slamming her lips to his, grabbing his hair tightly as she fought his tongue for dominance. You better take me to your room right now, Naru-kun, she ordered with a purr as she broke for air. Yes ma'am, he gave her that damnable smirk before using the Hurration to speed up the process. Neither would sleep much that night, fortunately the house was big enough for Tsunade and Menma to save themselves any exposure to the two teenagers' love-making. The next day found Naruto overlooking Menma's weekend training, the brothers having long since seen the Mizukage and her team off. The two were in a heavily forested portion of the former Senju clan compound, Menma flipping around the branches and trees in an attempt to fight his brother. The blonde however was anchored to his chosen spot, his brother not even able to make him take a step in any direction. Frankly, it was pissing Menma off, and while he understood his brother was holding back, he couldn't fathom how long it would take him to actually make his brother take a fight with him seriously. Damn it, the crimson-haired boy growled as his brother caught his kick with a smirk. Your speed is getting better, but you're still slow, Atauto, he said before finally taking a step only to throw the boy hurtling into one of the trees. You about ready to call it a day? Hell no, I won't give up Nai-chan, ever, the boy's conviction made Naruto smile wolfishly. Good, then come Atauto, he challenged, the boy dashing forward with a roar of defiance. However, his mad charge was halted as a new person landed in between them, holding a hand up to stop Menma. Violet eyes glared at the silver-haired cyclops before him, annoyed by the eye smile already on the man's face. Akanai Baka, why did you stop me, the boy grumbled, only for that infamous eye smile to seemingly brighten. Sorry Menma-kun, Hokage-sama has asked me to bring Naruto-kun to him, the silver-haired, now Jounin since he too was removed from the Anbu, apologized to the youngest of his surrogate brothers. What does the monkey want now? Naruto grumbled, earning a snicker from his younger brother at the nickname. I don't know, I was just asked to get you Naruto-kun, I can take over Menma-kun's training for today, I smiled now at the eldest Uzumaki, earning a foxy smile from the youngest. I'm going to kick your ass, Kakanai Baka. Is that so? Kakashi chuckled with a raised brow, Naruto shaking his head with a smirk. Finish up his taijutsu and then help him out with ninjutsu, Kakanai, the blonde directed, vanishing in a Raiten Shunshin. Now then, you were saying something about kicking my ass. Kakashi asked, Menma growling as he noticed Kakashi's eyes trained on that stupid orange pervert book. With a roar the crimson-haired boy was out to prove himself. Many hours later, the blonde found himself only able to ask one simple question, however complex it truly was. Are you sure about this? Naruto asked, his voice sounding remorseful as those daunting mix-matched eyes stared at his sensei's black. The woman looked down for a moment, the blonde feeling the turmoil radiating off her, before looking to her son. Itachi for his part had hardened himself, he knew what had to be done as much as a part of him hated it. It's what we need to do for the village and for any hope that some of my clan will be allowed to continue their lives, Mikoto said, her eyes beginning to match her son's hardened gaze. It wasn't often when a spouse was forced to kill their husband because of his actions. But, when she weighed the needs of the village to the ambitions of her husband, there was no contest and never would be in her heart. It was the exact principle she had taught her eldest after being exposed to the darkness of the Uchiha, the village before the clan. For the clan was but a branch of the mighty tree of Konohagakure, and when a branch rots it falls. Unfortunately, her husband, like her father and grandfather before him, had allowed that darkness to absorb them and take them from the path the clan chose when they shunned the beliefs of Uchiha Madara, her great-grandfather. It won't be much longer before they meet at the shrine, it is there that we will strike. Itachi looked to his mother, his resolve only softening for a moment as even he could still feel the turmoil in the woman's heart. You don't need to do this if you cannot, Kachan. He was going to recommend that she watch over Sasuke and allow her son and student to finish this. But, the Sharingan, or rather Mangekyo he'd only ever suspected his mother to possess, glared heatedly at him stopping any such suggestion. Don't fight her on this Itachi, Mikoto-sensei has made her decision, Naruto spoke, his tone and face free of all emotion. Itachi nodded, feeling a bead of sweat roll down his face as his friend put on display the cold look of his that helped earn his moniker, Senso no Okami. The eldest son of the Uchiha clan only nodded before the three vanished from the rooftops of the clan compound. Nearly an hour later, all three were hidden within the shadows of the hidden meeting hall beneath the Naka shrine. Naruto's cold eyes trained on the stone just behind Fugaku as the traitor to be overlooked his gathered men. The tablet unnerved him greatly, and what he could read with just the first stage of his Sharingan activated did not do anything to calm him. From his left he felt the hand of Mikoto on his back move to his shoulder, all of them using a camouflage technique taught by the Anbu. All three knew it would only take one of the conspirators to activate their Sharingan for them to be discovered and all hell to break loose. But, it seemed Mikoto wasn't worried about that as she caught Naruto's line of vision. The boy had a greater level of their clan's Dijutsu than herself, but he was just now finding the dark way that usually developed those eyes. The way of her husband, her father and her grandfather, maybe it was time that relic of the past found its way out of their clan's teachings. Considering she could make out every Uchiha council member at the front of the gathered men and women, she found herself morbidly admitting that there would be no one to oppose it. Tonight, in what was valued one of their most holy grounds, the era of the old Uchiha way would end. Allowing herself and the generation she raised to usher in what she prayed would be better for not only their clan, but Konoha as well. Just as she caught the blonde's eyes she mouthed the words, destroy it, and before she could blink the boy was gone in an ungodly burst of speed. Naruto reappeared, a swirling blue ball expanding into life in his palm as he stared at the stone with his eternal Mangekyo now active. That activation, and the brief moments it took for his attack to form, allowed the engraving of the stone to be imprinted on his mind, it only concreted his desire to reduce it to rubble. The Uchiha now behind him all gaped before seeing the blonde hair, the familiar orb of chakra in his hand aimed directly at their relic. An elder managed to throw himself between the blonde and the tablet in a remarkable burst of speed, but none were prepared for what happened next. That easily recognizable orb of pure blue chakra erupted with a volley of lightning, the sound of a storm of raging static filling every ear, Raiden. Rasandori. That one shout led to the blonde plunging his hand through the elder, only for the ball to explode in raw Raiden chakra on the other side. The attack did as the blonde had designed it to, completely eviscerating the relic into nothing but crumbles of the stone it once was. The blonde grunted for a moment, having only just recently created and mastered that variant of his father's prize jutsu. But, he still could feel the harsh glare, or rather glares, directed at him. Namikaze, you will pay with your life for this, Fugaku growled, his eternal Mangekyo activating as he glared at the back of his target. With practiced ease a kunai flew from his sleeve into his waiting palm as he charged the boy, but before his wild swing could land, a katana blocked his way. The gleaming blade was all too familiar to the man, as were the Mangekyo glaring heatedly at him. So, my wife has chosen a side it would seem, his voice came out with acceptance, as if he couldn't even fathom her choosing his side. I guess you really are still the girl who opposed your father's ways and his choice to marry you to me, so that someone like him could lead us. This is the way I have chosen, just as my father and you chose your ways, she glared at him, and any past hesitance was seemingly gone. Neither flinched as a scream erupted from the back of the gathered Uchiha. The father not even looking, already knowing exactly who it was that had silenced one of his men. Itachi said nothing, returning the glares sent his way with equal hate. If there was one thing he actually and wholeheartedly hated, it was this side of his clan. Kill him, an elder roared, just before a bullet of lightning rushed out of his forehead. Those next to the man looked back to see Naruto staring at them with his blue eye closed and right hand held out like a finger gun. Bang, the blonde muttered his eternal Mangekyo, the combined pattern of Shisui and Izumi's eyes, spinning ominously, before two more bullets of electricity left the tip of his finger, ending two more in the same way. Itachi himself had used a distraction to cleave his sword through several more of his clansmen, deflecting a barrage of shurikens so perfectly that he sent them flying back and killed several more Uchiha. Naruto appeared just behind those shocked at the skill of Itachi, cleaving his own sword laced with Raiten chakra through three necks at the same time. They've already killed quite a lot, Mikoto, why did they even need to send you? Fugaku smirked, watching as his wife's eyes widened when they picked up the chakra flowing from his system. Kaiten. Gikyaku no Jutsu. Her husband hadn't used a single hand seal, something she had never seen with their rite of passage jutsu, at least not from him. Thankfully, with how close they were, the stream from his mouth hadn't yet reached its full potential, giving her the chance to dodge. But she had taken her eyes off the man, and when she looked back he was gone. Her eyes quickly looked around, not finding him anywhere within the shrine. Quickly, she jumped to where Naruto was, taking down the several men and women he was fighting with a surprise attack of her own. Naruto, Fugaku has left, I need you to sense his chakra and see where he has gone, now. The blonde nodded easily, crouching down and placing two fingers to the ground before everyone still alive in the room felt a massive pulse of his chakra. When his eyes opened, Naruto glared in the direction he'd sensed the man. He's outside of the village, heading away with no other signatures close to him, nearest to him is a division of Anbu. They must have sensed him and begun chase, Mikoto growled, all in the matter of moments her husband had escaped. The man most likely had never planned to actually win his endeavor, not if he planned to fail like this. There's nothing we can do now, Mikoto growled, throwing her katana in a dart-like manner through another of the conspirators, the last of the elders who attempted to escape his fate. But, her eyes widened as she felt a familiar change in Naruto's chakra, before his own eyes widened slightly. She made to reach for him, but before her hand could find his arm, he was gone. Damn it, Naruto, I told you he wasn't your fight, she growled, her own sensing abilities flaring to life. Hers were nowhere near the prowess her student could manage, but she could just pick up the faint trail her husband had left in his use of several shunshin to escape, hopefully it would lead her to them both. Itachi, finish here, she ordered her eldest, only receiving a silent nod as the boy used what the Anbu had taught him to decimate the remaining would-be traitors. He had every intention of going right after his mother and brother in all but blood, just as soon as he finished here. Naruto reappeared where one of the kunai bearing his Hiraishin seal had been thrown, immediately pulsing his chakra before disappearing once more in that raw speed many knew him for. The Anbu had done exactly as the Hokage had instructed them, attempt to stop Fugaku, should he escape. If you cannot, use the kunai to bring backup. Naruto was that backup, and thanks to his sensory ability he'd already zeroed in on the fleeing Uchiha patriarch, knowing in the back of his mind his sensei was beyond livid with him. Forgive me, sensei, but these countermeasures were necessary, he whispered, before his senses screamed at him. Within a moment, his foot hit the next branch before releasing a burst of chakra that allowed him to flip away from the massive flames sent his way. But, the attacker didn't expect the three-pronged kunai that ripped through his flames, nor the blonde appearing above him with a Rasengan aimed directly at his head. He was quick to sidestep the counter, but didn't even see the kick coming that sent him flying into the tree behind him. You should have kept running, Fugaku Dono, the Uchiha could hear the animalistic growl escape the blonde's throat. Only a fool faces the wolf when they are its prey. Fugaku glared at the boy before his Sharingan flared into its final stage, he refused to allow this ingrate with nowhere near the battle experience he possessed to speak to him this way. I'll make you regret those words, Namikaze, I only wish I could be having this fight with that bastard father of yours, he growled, taking the stance of the most feared weapon of the Uchiha arsenal, the Jijeki Kai Ken, Interceptor Fist. So, that's what your hate stems from, nothing more than jealousy, Naruto taunted, before Fugaku nearly blanched as a foreign chakra begun circulating through his chakra. It was gone as quickly as it came, the blonde easily snapping it down with trained ease. Forgive me, but we can't do that so close to the village, the blonde said, and Fugaku knew it wasn't directed towards him. Who are you speaking to, Gaki? The Uchiha gave him a glance of trepidation. Someone who hates your clan more than most, it's the only mercy I will give you, not releasing that power upon you, Naruto glared, his still active Mangekyo spinning dangerously. However, for all you have put my precious sensei through, I won't let you walk away unscathed tonight, team. Fugaku had no time to continue his line of thought about what the blonde could mean, as within less than a moment, the blonde was already before him. He narrowly dodged the punch that devastated the tree behind him. But, he was forced to jump away as new branches launched from the tree in an attempt to ensnare him and stop any movement. The cruel smirk came to his face, catch me if you can, Namikaze, he taunted, before using his own impressive speed to escape once more. Naruto knew the lay of the land, and at the speed they had already traveled and Fugaku's trajectory, there was only one place he could be headed. Damn Uchiha and their dramatics, the blonde growled before mimicking the Uchiha's words in a mocking way. Nonetheless, it was not even a moment later he shot off after the man, all joking and mockery gone. It was only a matter of moments before the blonde exploded from the forest, skidding to a stop and glaring at the figure of Fugaku across a ravine from him. I never understood the dramatics your clan are so prone to, but if you wish to have our battle on these sacred grounds, Fugaku smirked as he felt Naruto's chakra flare, to the point it was nearly visible around him. I'll be more than happy to oblige. Good, Namikaze, show me all that you have and in return I'll show you the true power of these eyes of mine. Now it was Naruto's turn to be surprised as a familiar flare of chakra exuded from Fugaku, just as visible around the man. As I'm sure the tablet explained to you, the Mangekyo is gained through great loss, whether the life be taken by your own hands or the hands of another. The final and true form of the Mangekyo is gained when another set of Mangekyo replace the original. In most cases from a sibling or someone of very similar circumstances, whether it's gifted, he gestured his hand towards the blonde, or stolen, the Uchiha then gestured to his own eyes, a dark sneer across his face. Naruto's response was a cold, murderous glare. This man was everything he hated in the shinobi world, everything he wanted to wipe from it. With every word the man spoke, the regret the blonde felt for taking this from his sensei faded more and more. I've already destroyed one darkness of Konoha, his fist clenched tightly, before his katana appeared in an explosion of lightning. You will be the next, his declaration was cemented by the pointing of his mother's katana directly at the man. Until there is no remaining darkness of man in this world, I will hunt it and destroy it. Fugaku's cruel smirk only grew as he was forced to bring a kunai up to defend a lightning-quick attack from the blonde, not even surprised the blonde had made it to him across the ravine. Show me your power, here where your ancestor fought mine. The man laughed, expertly kicking the blonde in the chin and away, once more falling into his stance. Neither one paying any mind to the stone visage of Uchiha Madara and Senju Hashirama just a short distance from them, the place known as the Valley of the End. Shut up. The blonde roared, exploding back towards the man. They exchanged blows with experience and strength on both sides, the Uchiha surprising Naruto that he could match him. Regardless, the blonde would continue, unknowingly allowing his anger at the man to twist his dream of peace in this moment to one of murder of every one person like this man. His attacks became even more fierce as that anger drove him, fed him and strengthened him. The Uchiha only laughed, before surprising the blonde with another attack that sent him sprawling back. Yes boy, allow that anger to drive you, just as every Uchiha and shinobi should. He laughed, and Naruto's eyes widened for a moment. You hate me, but in this moment you are just like me, willing to do whatever it takes to destroy what you don't agree with, he smirked cruelly, and Naruto wanted to argue. But, this man was right, for a moment he had forsaken his way for hate just as this man did. Naruto released a calming breath, before his chakra exploded around him even more vivid than before, as the blue chakra ebbed into a dark green, before the markings of his Senenmoto appeared. His Sharingan and blue eye glared at the man, only inciting another smirk from him. There, that's the power I wanted to see, Fugaku's eyes hardened, before his own Sharingan began spinning dangerously. Now, you may see the true power of the Sharingan, when the power of both eyes are activated at once, Susanoo. Immediately, a skeletal being of pure chakra came to life around the man, crimson in color with golden eyes that glared heatedly at the blonde. Naruto only looked back with an eerie calmness that surprised the man. So, this is the power the Shadai spoke of in his journals, what Madara was capable of. The blonde examined it for a moment. Though he described it much differently, I assume you don't have the exact same prowess with it as Madara once possessed. That was it, the blonde was back to himself and already finding the words to infuriate his opponent. Maybe, I was wrong about what I told you before, about the mercy I would give you tonight. The calm with which he said those words sent warning flags sky-high within Fugaku's mind. Slightly awestruck, he watched as that exploding green chakra of the boys began to bubble with colors of crimson even darker than his Susanoo. Well, I have come to terms with my tenant, my holding him must remain a secret, so I'm afraid tonight you will die. With those words that crimson exploded from the boy, his blue eye morphing into a way Fugaku couldn't even describe. The pupil became gold before dilating and bleeding red into the white of his eye, giving the boy a truly fearsome presence, combined with the Senin power he was already exuding. Prepare yourself, he growled, a single tail of chakra growing out from his cloak. Makoto's eyes widened as she felt the quick explosion of chakra before everything seemed to fade within no less than 5 minutes. What was that, she mumbled, not stopping her progress toward the two. She had only felt chakra like that around her former best friend, and only once near the level it was released at that moment. But, it wasn't like that fateful night 11 years ago, it was calmer, subdued even, and most certainly controlled. So, this is what Naruto-kun has been hiding, she whispered, connecting the dots quickly. But, those thoughts left her just as quick as they had come, when nearly all of the chakra she could feel suddenly stopped as a third presence appeared, and it and her husband's disappeared. When she burst from the trees, she was surprised to find Naruto breathing heavily, his modesty barely hidden by his tattered and destroyed clothing. But, regardless, he was whole and her husband hadn't managed to wound him gravely. "Naruto," she called, quickly coming to his side and beginning to channel healing chakra. "Of all the reckless things you've done, this tops them all." "Then you don't know half the reckless things I've done, sensei," he chuckled weakly, missing the glare sent his way. "I'll have to apologize to Itachi, I was wrong, saying Fugaku couldn't fight his way out of a paper bag, very wrong," another chuckle, as he grunted, moving himself to a sitting position. "I underestimated him before, but not this time, he held nothing back and I had him beat, but someone stopped me. I felt a third chakra signature here, but I've never felt it before," she confirmed, earning a nod from the blonde. "But, I've felt it before sensei, twice," he glared at what she presumed to be the spot the owner of said chakra had been. "Once, while I was held prisoner by the Yonde Mizukage, and another 11 years ago, during the Kyuubi attack." The Kodo allowed her eyes to widen greatly. "You can't mean," but the glare her former student sent her quieted any rebuttal she could have mustered. "I won't ever forget that man's chakra, the one who nearly took everything from me," his glare returned to the spot. "Uchiha Fugaku is now working with her for that man." The Kodo allowed the sadness at that discovery to seep into her eyes for but a moment. "I'll finish healing you, and then we need to report to Hokage-sama," she said. Naruto could sense her sadness easily, all too easily, having become so close to his sensei. "I'm sorry, Mikoto-sensei." Naruto groaned as he looked at the woman across the desk from him, her mirthful green eyes meeting his own mix-matched glare with ease. The blonde silently wondered when her eyes started to fill with love when meeting his own, but did nothing to lessen the serious look he was giving her. "You know you could have sent this by messenger hawk, you have many at your disposal as Mizukage, Mei-chan." "Oh, I just couldn't miss the chance to have you here, Naru-kun." That playfulness in her tone forebode that this was just the beginning of the minx's plans. "Besides, it will also allow you to escort me to Konoha for this year's official meeting. I suppose you'll use any free time we have to goad me into as many dates as possible." He sighed, only for her grin to double in size if that was even possible. "Don't pretend like you don't love seeing me all dressed up for our excursions out, and I know you love the after even more." The blush lighting his cheeks only encouraged her grin's growth. "Besides, isn't it a husband's duty to spoil his lovely wife? We're not married yet, troublesome woman," the blonde deadpanned, making her giggle. "Consider it practice for our future then, Naru-kun." Naruto had to admit he couldn't argue any of her points, but that didn't make her any less troublesome as he had put it. "I suppose it's fine, and I'll be back in Konoha in time for Itato's graduation from the academy." She knew this was his own way of submitting to her planning. "Oh, and you leave and have a date for the event," she smiled, enjoying the groan that escaped his lips. "How is my dear Menma-chan?" she asked, finally getting her giggles under control. Naruto raised a brow at the woman, still surprised by how attached she was to his family, not to forget protective. His mix-matched eyes looked to the blue sky behind her. With any luck he's in class as he should be, and not on the receiving end of a beating from Bachan for skipping again. He sighed at the mental image, amazed at how his brother managed to survive their fearsome grandmother's rage at every turn. His eyes then found those mirthful green with a smirk spreading across his face. "How about we catch up over a bowl or three of ramen, my treat?" "Well, I suppose I can make time in the busy schedule of the Mizukage for our honored guest, my future husband no less." She smiled fondly at him, and in that moment, Naruto was reminded why he was so infatuated with this troublesome woman. With the grace of a goddess amongst men, she stood from her chair, sauntered around the desk and to the door, with that antagonizing extra sway to her hips. "Are you coming, Narukoi?"